Okay. Let me, I know that you've each put your team rosters, or certainly one of you have. If you would go ahead and put the other team roster up in the chat room so that the scoring panelists can do it. What I'm going to try to do is make a roster of attorneys here on my piece of paper. I'm old school. For the plaintiff, who is going to be appearing for the plaintiff as the attorneys. Go ahead and introduce yourselves, whomever you are.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Emma Senishin, and I, along with my co-counsel, represent the plaintiff. If my co-counsel could go ahead and introduce themselves.
Please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Lydia Brisky, and today I will be presenting the opening statement.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Saffron Bennett Spurlock, and today I would be delivering the closing arguments.
Your Honor, would you also like our witnesses to introduce themselves at this time, or just attorneys for now?
Yeah, well, the attorneys first. Saffron Bennett, what was the last name? I'm sorry.
The last name is Bennett Spurlock.
Spurlock. I almost got it before you went off. Very well. All right. So those are the attorneys. Yes, please, witnesses as well.
Good afternoon. My name is Julie Perry, and I am Dakota Weirs. Good afternoon. My name is Ruth Herlinger, and I am Carson Durst.
Good.
Good afternoon. My name is Lucille Walker, and I am Dr. Casey Rogers.
Very good. And on the defense side.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Matthias Bauer. I'm part of the defense, and today I will be performing the direct examination on Skylar Weirs and providing the cross-examination on Dakota Weirs.
Okay. Spell your last name, Mr. Bauer.
B-A-U-E-R.
Ah, too simple. Okay. Since we don't have identifications up on the screen, I'm going to have to write it all down. Please go ahead.
Good evening, Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Maggie Holland, and today I'll be providing the direct examination of Blake Doncourt, the cross-examination of Carson Durst, as well as performing the closing argument this evening.
Very well. Holland, Holland, I suspect.
That is correct, Your Honor.
Good guess. All right.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Tony Adams, and today I will be performing the opening statement, the cross-examination of Dr. Casey Rogers, and the direct examination of Dr. Devin Williams.
All right. Adams with 1D or 2?
1D.
Too easily. Very well. Please end your witnesses now, please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Alex Holland, and today I am Blake Doncourt.
Anyone else?
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Sophie Lehman, and I am Skylar Weirs.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Hannah Moskowitz, and I am Dr. Devin Williams.
Very good. Let's reconfirm that we have no conflicts. I am certainly conflict free. Are any of the scoring panelists conflicted in this one at all? If you are, please come on and tell me. Okay. I'm sorry, I heard something.
No, Your Honor.
Oh, perfect. Couldn't be better. I'm thinking it might make sense for the scoring panelists for purposes of opening and closing argument, to have their cameras on, but probably off otherwise, simply to save bandwidth and maybe protect the system a little bit better from a possible failure. Does anybody have a problem with that, especially the scoring guys?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, I think that makes sense, frankly. Obviously, you can leave it on if you want to, but I think for opening and closing, these people need to actually maybe see a face, just to prove that we are real people as opposed to cartoon characters, possibly. All right, let's get into the meat and potatoes here. We've already done that. this is being streamed live, actually, with a small delay, but we're not supposed to you're not supposed to record this and use it to scout other teams. So I'm going to just ask you guys to be on your honor on that, because there's no way to possibly enforce that, I see at this point. The Colorado Bar Association will probably be wanting to grab screenshots of what you are doing to put advertising together and show how wonderful this program is, and particularly how wonderful you are. So if by participating in this, you grant authority for them to use your image and your voice and whatever else to promote the program. If there's anyone online, and I noticed that we have a bunch of people watching, we have 16. If you are not connected with the teams in this round, then you're supposed to exit the room. Again, that's one of those on your honor kinds of things. We're not going to have any recesses unless there's an emergency. Now, the word emergency has a fuzzy definition. You can self-determine that. We're not going to have a recess if somebody has to leave, unless, of course, they're at the podium, in which case that might be problematic. If you're one of the witnesses in the room and you didn't need to go out, or if you're one of the attorneys and it's not your turn to do something and you need to leave, feel free to do so. Need not raise your hand or ask permission. The point of this is to allow us to keep moving forward in case somebody needs to take a rest break of some sort. Any disputes arising out of this competition have got to be reported in accordance with the competition rules, and you already knew that. There are timers, I hope, for each side. Do we have the timers here present with us in the room?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And do we have a timer for the other side?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ooh, very nice feedback. What I'm going to ask that you timers do is at the end of each of the timed events, like an examination or whatnot, post in the chat section what time remains, if you would. Just sort of put a little thing over there. That way we won't have to do cross checks, and the people who are performing can then keep track of that. And if there's a discrepancy, you guys do a private chat and work it out, if you don't mind. And if you get stuck and can't, well, then I'll fix it for us all. I'm going to allow a small delay between each scorable event, like after the opening argument of one side and before the opening argument of the other, just to allow our scoring panelists to catch up, because they're going to have their heads down. They're going to be writing notes. They're going to be making scores. And I want them to have the benefit of your brilliance. So we'll probably have a 15 to 20 second gap in there. That's only going to be for purposes of allowing them to catch up. If you can certainly take your position and be ready to go. And I will tell you that you may proceed. That's our key word on you may go forward. Okay. I need to swear in some people. And please remain seated for this. Team members, please raise your right hands. Team members, do you promise that the presentation you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition? If you agree, say I do.
I do.
Very well. Thank you very much. You may put your hands down. Witnesses, please raise your hands. Do you promise that the testimony you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition? If you do, please say I do.
I do.
I do.
Okay, good enough. I'm not going to worry about those gallery members because they are where they are. Scoring panelists, if you don't mind, please as well. Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition?
I do.
Okay, wonderful. I knew that we all would. I think that probably takes care of the housekeeping. Are there any other housekeeping matters on behalf of the plaintiff before we get started with preliminary motions?
Yes, Your Honor, we have 3 housekeeping matters at this time.
Okay,
First, we request permission to reserve any time not used in our closing argument for rebuttal.
of course.
And second, there are stipulated facts that have been agreed to before today's trial. We request that these facts are constructively read into the record.
They are.
And finally, we would just like to confirm the method we will be using to enter exhibits during today's trial. Team Pam intends to screenshot the exhibit at the onset of the questioning of the witness. We would then proceed with entering the exhibit. In this case, the jury would not constructively see the exhibit until Your Honor has formally admitted it into evidence. Would this be acceptable, Your Honor?
Well, I tell you what, I have seen people do in the past, and I think it's best is to go ahead and have the witness identify it, qualify it if they can. And then once it's admitted, then you can put it up on the screen. And then we can all see it. That's basically publishing to the jury. So let's keep that formality if we can for purposes of this trial. Does that, you understand what I'm trying to ask you to do?
Yes, Your Honor. That sounds perfect.
Okay, no problem.
We have no further housekeeping matters.
All right, anything housekeeping on behalf of the defendant?
Yes, Your Honor. I'm assuming that those were the pretrial matters, correct?
Yeah, but that's fine. If you have some motions, then we can do that as well. But let's talk about just easy procedural things first.
At this time, we do not have any motions, Your Honor.
Oh, okay. And no housekeeping or motions. Very well. On behalf of the plaintiff, are there any motions?
No, Your Honor.
Oh, very well. Then in that case, I think we are ready to proceed with opening argument. Does everybody agree that we're ready, that we have nothing further to do until then? Okay, good. It seems that way.
Your Honor,
All right.
Your Honor, could we
Yes.
still, I'm sorry, there was confusion. Are we still have a few pretrial matters that we would like to?
Why, sure.
Thank you so much. All right, we simply ask that all witnesses be constructively sequestered
Of course,
and that this also be extended to the plaintiff.
of course.
All right, that's it. Thank you, Your Honor.
Yep, well, good for the goose, good for the gander. It all works that way. Okay,
Your Honor,
anything else? Yes, please.
I'm sorry. I could be wrong. I do think it is I think it might be in the mock trial rules that witnesses are not sequestered.
No. He said constructively, and you might have missed that piece. Basically, he's just saying, if it was a real trial, there would be a sequestration request at the outset, and witnesses would be called to leave the courtroom. In mock trial, that's not the case. But he's simply doing it as a procedural matter, to point out that he would be doing it in an actual trial. That's all.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, and if counsel need clarification on stuff like that, please just speak up. We're not going to have confusion here. We're going to have clarity. All right. Are we ready for opening on behalf of the plaintiff?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and distinguished members of the jury. My name is Lydia Brisky, and I, alongside my co-counsel, represent the plaintiff of the following case, Miss Dakota Weirs. Evidence will show we are all here today because Lush Fertilizer prioritized profits over people. More specifically, my client, Miss Dakota Weirs. You see, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, all companies have a duty to protect their users and put safety and ethics above all else. But Lush Fertilizer failed to do this. Witness testimony will show that they prioritized their earnings over the safety of their consumers, and this decision had consequences. Today, we will call 3 witnesses to the stand. First, Dakota Weirs will testify and share how before Lush came into her life, she was an active member of the community, part of her school's National Honor Society, student body president, and a piano prodigy with a bright future ahead at Juilliard, where she was offered a full ride scholarship. She will tell you how her summers were spent working at Haven Landscaping and spreading Lush fertilizer. Little did she know this product would ruin her life completely. Dakota will testify how she began to feel sick all of the time, and after countless doctor and hospital visits and a colossal amount of medical bills, she was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. She will share how her passions and dreams were stripped away and replaced with pain and severe bouts of depression the minute she was exposed to a chemical compound in Lush fertilizer called Drufo. Next, Carson Durst, a former Lush employee, will testify and show you an email sent by Lush's Drufo product manager, which states that Lush's own labs identified Drufo as a potential carcinogen and how they chose to hide the fact that their product could have caused cancer from their consumers, endangering the lives of each and every one of them. Finally, we will call Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand, a previous research analyst for a multinational chemical company and qualified expert in both agriculture and chemistry, who will share that Drufo is extremely carcinogenic. She will tell you after hearing the negative reports of this chemical, she took it into her own hands and conducted a study to investigate. She will then share the results of her study, that people exposed to Drufo are 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer, and identify a direct link between Drufo and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The defense will then try to delude you into thinking Lush is completely innocent and frantically point fingers at anyone else. They will present to you Blake Doncourt, the CEO of Lush Fertilizer, who is a divorcee with financial complications with their ex-spouse, driven to prioritize profits over people. Skylar Weirs, an uncredible witness testifying against their own twin Dakota. And Devin Williams, the head of research's development team at Lush, who will testify extensively as to the environmental benefits of their products, but will say nothing regarding the actual safety of Drufo. Do not let them misguide you into thinking anyone else is to blame. Members of the jury, we as the plaintiff would like to remind you of the burden of proof we hold in today's case. The burden to prove by a preponderance of the evidence each element of Lush's negligence. A preponderance of evidence is the lowest burden of proof in our judicial system, and we will meet this burden. You will learn quickly today that 2 out of the 4 elements of negligence are not in dispute. That number 1, Lush manufactured a product with Drufo. You will hear many witnesses from both sides testify to this. And number 3, that Dakota was reasonably expected to use this product given that she was an employee at a landscaping company. However, we will prove by a preponderance of the evidence that Lush had a duty to protect their users from harm and failed to do this, prioritizing profits over people. This failure was the direct and proximate cause of my client's damages, and thus Lush must be held liable for their negligence, and Ms. Dakota Weirs must be awarded the maximum amount of non-economic damages proven at trial today and awarded by law. Thank you.
Very well, and opening on behalf of the defendant, if you will take your position and hold up a minute until everyone is ready. Who will be providing the opening on behalf of the defendant?
I will, Your Honor. Tony Adams.
Okay, Mr. Adams. And sir, you may proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court. Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury, handle with care. 3 little words that could have made a world of a difference in today's trial. As you have heard from the plaintiff's opening statement, Ms. Weirs was a teenager who worked as a landscaper where they frequently used many fertilizers and pesticides, one of which was Lush fertilizer. Of course, since then, Ms. Weirs has been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Now, our heart goes out to her, and we truly wish Ms. Weirs a speedy recovery. In today's trial, we will show that it is more probable than not that the negligence for this tragedy does not fall on the company Lush Fertilizer. The defense's argument in today's trial is twofold. We will show, one, that the chemical Drufo in lush fertilizer is not carcinogenic, and therefore it is more probable than not that it did not cause Ms. Weir's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And two, we will show that even if the chemical were dangerous, all negligence would still fall on the plaintiff, Dakota Weirs, because the products she used were not handled with care. 3 little words that could have made a world of a difference in today's trial. The defense will call several witnesses in today's trial. You will hear, first, let's go back to Dakota Weirs. Had Dakota Weirs handled these products with care, she would have worn the recommended safety equipment. Had Dakota Weirs handled these products with care, she would have protected herself not only from the chemicals in lush fertilizer, but from the multitude of chemicals she was exposed to on a regular basis as her job as a landscaper. Had Dakota Weirs handled these products with care, we may not even be here today. The defense will call several witnesses in today's trial. First, you'll hear from Ms. Blake Doncourt, the CEO of Lush Fertilizer. As the CEO, Ms. Doncourt knows her company inside and out, which is why she will be able to testify to the thorough, accurate, and rigorous safety test done for the chemical Drufo to show that they were, in fact, handled with care. She will also show that the company Lush Fertilizer is not some big bad company that prioritizes profits over people. Instead, she will show that they care deeply for each and every one of their customers. It is this deep care that leads Ms. Doncourt to hire only the best scientists for her research team, such as the toxicologist, Dr. Devin Williams, who you will also hear from in today's trial. Dr. Williams will use her education in her PhD in the field of toxicology and pharmacology, along with her years of experience in the chemical Drufo specifically, to show that it is more probable than not that the chemical Drufo cannot cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Furthermore, she will use her years of experience in education to disprove and show the many failures of the study conducted by Dr. Casey Rogers, the plaintiff's expert witness. Throughout today's trial, you will hear from several expert witnesses with varying opinions. And as this information is thrown at you, we urge you to consider the differences in relevance between these experts. Consider the plaintiff's expert witness, Dr. Rogers, a professor in entomology and agriculture, who has written exactly one flawed study that attempts to find a correlation between the use of Drufo and development of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. A study that has not been peer-reviewed, replicated, and fails to use the scientific method. Compare that to the defense's expert witness, Dr. Williams, who has spent an entire career dedicated specifically to the chemical Drufo. Whose testimony weighs more? The defense will call yet another expert witness, Skylar Weirs, the twin sister of Dakota Weirs. And while we understand that it can be complicated having 2 siblings on opposite sides of today's trial, we urge you to look past this relationship and into the information provided to you by Ms. Weirs, such as she will show that the chemical Drufo in fact protects the users by limiting the amount of times that it must be sprayed per year. At this time, I'd like to remind the jury of the burden of proof in today's trial. The burden of proof rests on the plaintiff of a preponderance of evidence. This means they must show that it is more probable than not that the chemical Drufo caused Ms. Weir's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and furthermore, that the company Lush Fertilizer was negligent in distributing their products. This means that even if you believe that the chemical were dangerous, you would still have to consider the varying amounts of negligence for Ms. Weir's failure to handle the product with care. In today's trial, we are confident that the plaintiff will fail to handle this burden with care, which is why we ask you to return a verdict in favor of the defense. Thank you.
Very well. Will the plaintiff please call the first witness? And scoring panelists, if you wish to go off camera, you are welcome to do so.
Your Honor, the plaintiff calls Miss Dakota Weirs to the stand.
Dakota Weirs. Ms. Weirs, you are still under oath.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Miss Weirs.
Afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
My name is Dakota Weirs, Weirs.
Ms. Weirs, why are you here today?
I am here today since I am suing Lush Fertilizer Incorporated because their product, Lush Fertilizer, gave me my non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
Response.
Your Honor, we are here today because Ms. Weirs believes that Lush Fertilizer caused her cancer. She should be allowed to testify that.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Sure.
This exact response is the reason for which this is a speculation. There's been no foundation laid for Dakota Weirs' connection to Lush Fertilizer nor the products. Therefore, an immediate statement on how Lush Fertilizer caused her cancer is speculative.
Interesting objection, but I'm going to overrule it and we can proceed. Thank you.
Ms. Weirs, could you tell us a little bit about how you were diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Yes. Just before I was set to leave for college, in which I was supposed to go to Juilliard, and after several years of working in the landscaping industry, I noticed I started to feel sick all the time. No one knew what was wrong with me, and so after scores of hospital and doctor's visits and a large amount of medical bills, I was finally diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma. My life is all but over.
And how did you come into contact with Lush Fertilizer?
I had worked since I was 14 years old as a landscaping technician for our local Haven Landscaping. Due to my age, I was primarily responsible for spreading the seed and the fertilizer, one of those being Lush Fertilizer.
Now, Ms. Weirs, how can you be sure that you used Lush Fertilizer?
I had remember seeing the label many times at where I worked and knowing that it caused my cancer. At this point, once I learned that it might have caused my cancer, I then had my boss send me a photo of the label, which also confirmed I used Lush.
Ms. Weirs, do you have a copy of what has been previously marked as Exhibit 1 in front of you?
Yes, I do.
I'd like to direct your attention to that exhibit. Is Exhibit 1 the Lush label you are referring to?
Yes, it is.
And would you say that Exhibit 1 is a fair and accurate representation of that label?
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, at this time, we move to enter Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Any objections?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 1 is admitted.
Permission for my co-counsel to screen share this exhibit?
Yes, you may publish.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, do you see any sort of warning on this label?
I see that the Lush label states that it could cause eye irritation.
And where do you see that?
Under the hazards, it says caution, causes eye irritation.
Okay, and do you see any safety recommendations on this label?
Yes, there's a part that says user safety recommendations.
Could my co-counsel zoom into that section of the label, please? Ms. Weirs, could you read the first sentence of that section for the jury?
As with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin.
Ms. Weirs, did you wear protective clothing while you were working with this product?
Not all the time, but I don't see how doing this would protect me from possible eye irritation.
Okay, and could you go ahead and read that second sentence?
Yes. Use a respirator or N95 face mask is recommended.
Did you wear a face mask?
Not all the time. However, again, I fail to see how a N95 face mask would cover my eyes and protect me from eye irritation.
Have you ever come across an N95 face mask that covered your eyes?
No, I never have.
Okay, and if my co-counsel could zoom out a little bit. Ms. Weirs, do you see anywhere on this label anything that mentions cancer?
No, nothing on here mentions anything about cancer or really any other warnings.
Okay, Ms. Weirs, if Lush had explicitly stated that this product could cause cancer, would you have done things differently?
Well, yes, I may have worn protective clothing and covered my face. However, I might not never even gone near a product like this.
My co-counsel can now stop screen sharing this exhibit. Thank you. Ms. Weirs, what was it that prompted you to look into Drufo as a cause of your cancer?
Well, one day after a pretty serious bout of depression, I was at home on the couch, like I always am now, when I was watching a news and a story popped up about Lush fertilizer and their main ingredient, Drufo. Someone had leaked some documents.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. My witness just started to make the statement, but I believe the statement that opposing counsel is objecting to was the statement made in the news story, if that's correct. And this is not hearsay because it is not offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted. I'm offering it to prove the effect on the listener. When Ms. Weir saw or heard, I guess, this TV clip, that is what then prompted her to look into Drufo as the cause of her cancer. And that's what I'm trying to illustrate for the jury today.
And response?
Your Honor, this is hearsay as it is being offered for the truth of the matter being asserted.
I think it basically is an explanation of her reason for inquiring. I don't think it's material enough to exclude it. I'm going to permit it. Overrule.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, could you tell us what you heard on that TV?
Yes, this news story that I saw on TV had stated that someone had leaked some documents about Lush fertilizer lying about the safety of their products and potentially knew that Drufo could cause non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
And is there anything else that indicated to you that your cancer was caused by Lush fertilizer?
Well, yes, I have a twin, Skylar. And growing up, Skylar and I participated in pretty identical activities. The only thing that set us apart was my landscaping job. Non-Hodgkin lymphoma is indeed environmental, not genetic, and the only differences in our environment was that I was exposed to Drufo where I worked. So, in theory, if it was anything else that gave me my non-Hodgkin lymphoma, Skylar should have it too.
Ms. Weirs, what symptoms do you experience from your non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
I have rapid weight loss and I often feel fatigued. I have chest pains and chills and swollen lymph nodes, which are quite painful.
How would you say this illness has affected your life?
In short, my life has been ruined. Prior to my illness, I was an active member of my community. I volunteered at the local homeless shelter. I was part of National Honor Society.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. First of all, I think relevance is a pretty low bar, and this goes to show the damages Ms. Weirs has suffered as a result of her cancer.
It's a preliminary bar, actually, to any admissibility of evidence that has to be relevant as its first test. She is claiming some non-economic damages, and I think this is relevant to that, so I'm going to overrule. You may continue.
Again, I was just saying I was an extremely active member of my community. As I said, I was part of National Honor Society, as well as I was class president. I just enjoyed going to school and seeing my friends, and I can't do any of that anymore.
I'm so sorry, Ms. Weirs. I mean, in all of this, what would you say has been the worst part?
The worst part of it all has been the loss of my piano. Piano is, or was, my life. I had done piano almost every day and practiced super hard. And with my ability, I was even awarded a full ride scholarship to Juilliard. And it was everything I could have ever dreamed of.
And can you still play piano?
No, aside from the swollen lymph nodes, which again can be very painful, and the frequent chills and chest pains, I no longer have the strength to sit down at the piano for a long period of time. Sitting in these hard benches and this chair is even hard right now. It makes it impossible to play the shortest piece.
I'm so sorry, Ms. Weirs. Is there anything else you'd like to say about piano?
Yes, my grandfather had inspired me to play, and playing with him is my most favorite thing to do in the whole world. He unfortunately passed away a few years ago. And what hurts the most in all of this is that I feel as though I lost him a second time. I no longer can sit down at the piano and pretend he's right there beside me, playing next to me.
So now that you can no longer play the piano, what do you think you're going to do about the Juilliard scholarship?
Due to my cancer, I unfortunately had to decline. I don't ever see myself being able to play as well as I used to, and so I can't go to Juilliard.
And now that you've declined that scholarship, what do you think your future will look like?
I frankly have no idea what the future will hold. I don't know if I will recover or continue to decline, and even my doctor's uncertain of what care I might need in the future. I'm just so scared.
Ms. Weirs, to reiterate, why are you here today?
I'm here today because I don't want this to happen to anybody else. Lush Fertilizer Incorporated had prioritized maybe perhaps profits and other things rather than the safety of their customers. And I'm suffering the consequences of that choice, and others will too.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Well, any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. May I begin?
Hang on just a short here, please. All right, Mr. Bauer, you may proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Mrs. Weirs, I first want to start off by saying that here at Lush Fertilizer, we truly sympathize with your condition, and we really wish you a speedy recovery. But there's some questions we need to get. There's some questions that I want to ask you, so let's get to it. Now, Mrs. Weirs, you worked at Haven Landscaping, correct?
Yes, since I was 14.
And at age 14, it's a bit of a young age to be working with big equipment. So you worked with fertilizers, correct?
Yeah, again, I was primarily responsible for spreading the seed in the fertilizer.
Okay, so you worked with fertilizers, and amongst these fertilizers, you worked with many different brands of fertilizers containing many different ingredients, correct?
Yes, many of them with more extensive warning labels.
Okay, so you worked with many different fertilizers, and you worked there for many years, correct?
Yes, this is correct.
So there is no conclusive direct correlation they could place between your condition and Lush Fertilizer, as you worked with many different fertilizers, correct?
While I did work with many different fertilizers, there's abundance of evidence that shows that Lush Fertilizer is the most probable cause of my cancer.
But Mrs. Weirs, there is no direct link with Lush Fertilizer and your cause of non-Hodgkin lymphoma, correct?
I had directly worked with this product, and I think that's direct enough.
Okay, now I would like to move on to warnings provided by your employer at Haven Landscaping. Now, at Haven Landscaping, you were instructed to wear pants, correct?
Objection, hearsay.
Response.
Your Honor, this is not hearsay as it is not being, may I confer with co-counsel, Your Honor?
Sure.
Your Honor, this is an exception to hearsay as it is a regularly conducted business activity.
Is there a denial that she was given that instruction, counsel? Essentially.
I don't really see how this is a business activity. If it's a statement, is opposing counsel saying that the statement was a business activity?
Well, I guess my question to you is there any dispute over the fact that she was given that instruction?
I just don't think that it's admissible because it's hearsay.
I understand. not hearing, in fact, I have read the problem and I think she was given the instructions, so I'm going to allow it. Objections overruled.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Mrs. Weirs, you're also instructed to wear long sleeve shirts, correct?
It was never enforced, and many of my other colleagues didn't.
Are you saying that you weren't instructed to wear long sleeve shirts?
My boss had told me many times, yes, but again, never enforced.
Okay, so you were always instructed to wear long sleeve shirts. Now, were you also instructed to wear gloves?
I was often told to perhaps cover myself, but again, not everyone did.
Okay. Now, Mrs. Weirs, did you wear the instructed pants?
No, I had not, but again, none of this has anything to do with the warning of eye irritation.
So you didn't wear your pants. So did you also wear your instructed long sleeve shirts?
Not all the time, but I didn't see a need to, while many of my colleagues didn't. And again, this was for eye irritation.
This is not concerning eye irritation, but rather your instruction by Haven Landscaping. Now, were you also instructed to wear, did you follow the instruction to wear gloves, Mrs. Weirs?
Not all the time, no.
Okay. Now, I would like to direct your attention to Exhibit 1. Are you familiar with Exhibit 1?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Now, Your Honor, may I please screen share Exhibit 1 as it has already been previously?
Sure, you bet.
Right. Screen share. Can you see this?
Yes, I can.
And is this a fair and accurate representation of Exhibit 1?
It is.
I'm trying to flip my screen, but I guess that won't work. Okay. Now, Mrs. Weirs, in Exhibit 1, it directly states, sorry. I'm flipping my computer now.
If you would like, Team Pam can also screen share Exhibit 1 flipped.
If you could do that, that would be so great.
Yeah, could my co-counsel go ahead and share Exhibit 1? The exhibits are kind of tricky.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. We will work together and get through this. It'll be
Thank you.
fine. All right, there's Exhibit 1.
Okay. Now, Mrs. Weirs, can you see Exhibit 1?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so follow along as I read out loud under user safety recommendations. As with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin. Use of a respirator or N95 mask is recommended. Now, Mrs. Weirs, did you follow and wear protective clothing when using Lush fertilizer products?
Well, I don't understand why I'd be expected to do
Objection, Your
this.
Honor. Asked and answered. We've already covered protective clothing.
Response, Your Honor.
Yes.
This is over the instruction by the Lush fertilizer packaging, not by Mrs. Weir's Haven Landscaping employer.
Agreed. Overruled.
I will re-ask the question. Mrs. Weirs, did you wear the instructed protective gear that this packaging instructs?
I failed to see as to why I should do so when Lush also failed to see why they should add proper warning labels. But no, often I did not.
Okay, so you did not wear the instructed clothing. Now, Mrs. Weirs, did you wear the instructed N95 mask that is recommended in this packaging when using Lush fertilizer products?
Not all the time. No, I did not see the need to because it only states that it possibly could cause eye irritation.
Okay, so you did not follow the instructed safety recommendations on this packaging.
Not all the time.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Weirs. No further questions, Your Honor.
Very well. Is there any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, just one question. May I proceed?
Sure.
Ms. Weirs, could you reiterate why you do not always wear protective gear?
I often did not see the need to, as many of my colleagues didn't, as well as the only warning this package had was eye irritation. If it had mentioned something like cancer, I most definitely would have worn all of those things.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Well, call your next witness. You may step down, Ms. Weirs.
The plaintiff calls Ms. Carson Durst to the stand.
Carson Durst. Ms. Durst, you are still under oath. Give me a second, and I'll let you know when to move forward. And you may proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, Ms. Durst. Could you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
Good afternoon. My name is Carson Durst, spelled D-U-R-S-T.
And Ms. Durst, what is your relationship with Blake Doncourt, the CEO of Lush Fertilizer, who's the defendant in today's case?
Yes, well, you see, as a kid, I was best friends with Blake's son, Charlie. We played soccer together. We even went to ASU together. And eventually I started working for Blake's company, Lush Fertilizer.
And when did you first begin your employment with Lush?
I first began at Lush as an intern with the product research and development team in June of 2003.
So while at Lush, what kind of roles did you take on?
Well, like I said, I started as an intern, but after just 3 months, I was promoted to the product development engineer.
And how did these roles first lead you to work on the research surrounding Drufo?
Well, when I first joined, Lush was just beginning to test the safety surrounding Drufo, and my job as an intern was to research a specific compound that comprises Drufo.
And in your research, did you discover anything that stood out to you?
Well, I did find this one study from England that did conclude that Drufo is in fact carcinogenic in rats. I documented—
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay. This exhibit has not been entered into evidence and it is being offered for the truth of the matter asserted.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. I do not believe I'm asking my witness to testify specifically to the contents of this exhibit, rather simply to its existence, which I do not believe is contested today and is not going for the truth of the matter asserted.
Response, Your Honor.
Yes.
I believe the witness had just testified the contents of the conclusion of this study.
Well, I agree. And so I'm, well, I tell you what, in a real world, I would sustain that objection, but I'm going to go ahead and let it go forward in the mock trial environment.
Ms. Durst, did you finish your response?
I'll continue. I documented this study in my lab notebook and sent it off to Jerry Langley, a member of upper management, who I believe reviewed it. And after that, it may have been compiled into a comprehensive report, but I'm not entirely sure.
So after this initial research and potential report, do you know what happened next with Drufo?
Well, the following September, we received another series of emails explaining that a second study was being conducted on Drufo.
And do you know what the purpose was of this study?
Yeah, Lush was researching whether or not Drufo is carcinogenic in humans. I personally felt pressure to document my data in a way that supported a specific hypothesis. As an experienced product engineer, I feel as though it's important to be careful when reviewing products, and I feel like everyone's voice should be heard.
Objection, Your Honor. This is the improper opinion of a lay witness. Ms. Durst is not an expert.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. I do not believe my witness is offering any testimony that would be considered outside of her scope of knowledge or that would qualify as expert testimony, simply to her own experiences as an employee of Lush Fertilizer.
And one more response.
Yes, Your Honor. I believe that Ms. Durst was testifying to her opinions of how the process of which information was shared at Lush Fertilizer should have been carried out. And this would be the proper opinion of a lay witness.
Well, I'm going to have to agree with that one. I think I'm going to sustain that one.
Okay, Ms. Durst, do you have a copy of Exhibit 4 in front of you?
Yes, I do.
And Ms. Durst, what is Exhibit 4?
It is a printout I kept from one of the emails I received.
And how do you know this?
Because I personally received the email.
Is it a fair and accurate representation?
Yes.
Your Honor, we move for the admission of Exhibit 4 into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, this is hearsay.
In what regard?
Your Honor, I believe that this is an out-of-court statement established for the truth of the matter asserted.
Well, any response to that?
Yes, Your Honor. Pursuant to Rule 801D2D, this is not hearsay as it's a statement made by an employee of the opposing party within the scope of their own knowledge.
Any response to that?
I stand by my objection, Your Honor. I believe that this is an out-of-court statement that does not have any exception to hearsay.
It's certainly out of court, but I think it stands as a admission by a party opponent. I'll allow it under that basis. Exhibit 4 is admitted.
Thank you. Co-counsel, could you please screen share Exhibit 4? Perfect, thank you. Ms. Durst, when did you initially receive this email?
In September of 2003.
And who sent you this email?
It came from Jerry Langley, a rather high up manager while at Lush.
And if my co-counsel could just zoom into the first paragraph of this email, that would be great. Ms. Durst, could you please refer to the first sentence of the second paragraph in the email and read aloud?
Of course. Following our lab's June Drufo study, concerns have arisen regarding generalized findings of potential carcinogenic qualities identified in samples produced during a period early in the year.
Thank you. My co-counsel may stop screen sharing the exhibit. So, Ms. Durst, from the emails such as this one, what was your general observation of upper management's intent?
Yeah, there certainly seemed to come a pressure for the studies to be read in a certain way. I would say that there is also an understanding that studies should be worded to allow for a wiggle
Objection,
room.
Your Honor. This is an improper opinion of a lay witness. I believe that Ms. Durst is diving into, again, whether or not a company should or shouldn't perform in a certain way.
Response.
Your Honor, as an employee of Lush Fertilizer, my witness is simply testifying to her personal experiences and personal understanding of how the company operated based on her time as a product engineer with Lush Fertilizer.
Right, and I'm a little concerned about the basis for her understanding of how things ought to go. Why don't you ask a few more questions to establish that basis?
Yes. Ms. Durst, how long have you worked in the fertilizer industry?
I have worked since 2003.
And would you say you have a lot of experience as an engineer working with companies such as Lush?
Yes, I would say so.
Thank you. So then based on this experience, what would you say your observations were of the intention coming from upper management in the emails you received?
Yeah, well, as I was saying, there certainly seemed to come a certain pressure for the studies to be read in a certain way. But in cases like these, I would say that studies should be worded to allow for wiggle room in case of a lawsuit such as this one. Regardless of the emails, I would like to say that the company's agenda was certainly made clear during the weekly meetings.
So yes, Ms. can you recount for us what took place in these meetings?
Yeah, well, in December of 2003, we were called in to present our findings on the second Drufo study. I remember one scientist expressing her concern surrounding Drufo being carcinogenic and specifically for non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
And what was upper management's response to these concerns?
Well, it seemed to me like this was definitely a significant concern, but at the end of the meeting, Alex Monroe, an upper echelon manager, said something along the lines of, let's just keep it in the walls until we figure out what we are doing.
So
Objection, Your Honor. That statement was hearsay.
Response.
Yes, Your Honor. Once again, pursuant to Rule 801 D2D, this is not hearsay as it's a statement made by the employee of the opposing party, Lush Fertilizer, within the scope of their knowledge.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to admit that under that basis. Objections overruled.
So, Ms. Durst, did anything happen after that meeting?
Well, about a month after the meeting, the new report hit my desk. It concluded that further analysis would be needed before making any conclusions regarding the likelihood of Drufo causing any long-term health effects such as cancer.
And was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma mentioned specifically anywhere in this report?
No, the report did not mention non-Hodgkin lymphoma at all.
And in this report, were any other recommendations made around Drufo safety?
Yes, the report did recommend for Lush to bake their fertilizer.
And to your knowledge, does Lush bake their fertilizer?
No, unfortunately, they do not.
So, Mr. After all of this happened, did you continue your employment with Lush?
No, you see, after I attempted to raise my concerns around Drufo, Blake received complaints about my work performance, and eventually I started working at Terrace Greenery, where I'm currently the lead product developer. Like I've said, though, I'm not here to talk about all of that, rather my observations while at Lush.
Right. So then just to summarize for the jury, from your time working at Lush, from these emails you received and these meetings you attended, what kind of impression were you left with?
Yeah, after being hired by Terrace Greenery, Lush decided to sue me. I mean, Blake had ignored my concerns, but was now concerned about my expertise. For a long time, I felt as though Lush has been neglecting ethical responsibilities, prioritizing profits over their own people. Drufo was just the goose that laid the golden egg.
Thank you, Ms. Durst. I have no further questions.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Durst, to jump into your involvement in this case, you grew up with the Doncourts, is that correct?
Yes, we were like family,
So you were very close.
very close.
And you graduated from the same college as CEO Blake Doncourt's son, correct?
Yes, Arizona State University.
And you are familiar with Miss Blake Doncourt, correct?
Yeah, I would say so, as we were like family.
Now, talking about how you came to work for Miss Doncourt and Lush Fertilizer. After your graduation, you could not find a job, is that correct?
I mean, yeah, I was straight out of college. Jobs are pretty hard to come by.
But then you got a high-end internship from Lush Fertilizer, is that correct?
Yes, I was really fortunate to find this opportunity.
And you know that Ivy League graduates and more experienced engineers were passed up for this internship, is that correct?
When Blake said that, it was out of anger, so I don't know how believable that statement is.
Well, this was still, this was said, and you still got the internship nonetheless, correct?
Yeah, I was qualified.
But it was also because a close family friend had pulled some strings from you.
Well, yeah, he knew me better than the other applicants, so I would say that's reasonable.
And this impacted your relationship with your coworkers, is that correct?
Yes, there was complaints and gossip around the water cooler about me, but nonetheless, it was still a great opportunity.
And they had questioned your qualifications, correct?
Yes, but I can assure you, I was more than qualified.
Okay, Ms. Durst, moving on to the research done on the chemical compound Rufo. You claim some data was left out of the 2003 report, is that correct?
Yes.
Yet it is known that you do not have access to the entire report, correct?
I mean, this was when I was an intern, so no, I did not have all of the necessary, yes.
And this was before any sort of promotion that you may have received that would have granted you access to all of the research data?
Yes, as I said, this was in my first 3 months. I did not have all the access.
Now, returning to your career at Lush Fertilizer, there were numerous complaints brought up against you, specifically your work ethic, correct?
Yes, I don't really know why these were exactly put against me, but I think it was just to, yeah, I think it was just, God.
But nonetheless, it resulted in a performance improvement plan, is that correct?
Yes, as I said, I think this was completely unfair, but yes, it did happen.
And when you had brought up these complaints to Miss Doncourt, you were upset, correct?
I mean, yes, Ms. Doncourt refused to intervene, and as she was like family to me, I felt a little disheartened.
And you had felt betrayed?
Yes, I did.
So you applied to a new job, is that correct?
Well, yeah, after I saw that I had no future at Lush, I needed to find a new job.
And this job application occurred with Lush's biggest competitor, Terrace Greenery, is that correct?
I mean, fertilizer was what I knew, and I was pretty good at it, so it only made sense.
But you had stated that this was to get Blake's goat, is that correct?
Yes, I thought that, but the main reason was that fertilizer was what I knew.
And then this was brought up, it was contested in court, is that correct?
Yes.
And this had prevented you from working at Terrace Greenery for another 6 months.
Yes, unfortunately.
So due to a potential violation of a confidentiality contract that you had signed on the outset of working at Lush Fertilizer?
Sorry, I don't really understand the question. Could you repeat it?
Yes, so this was a violation of a contract that had prevented you from working for 6 months.
Yes, but as I said, this has already been handled in an outside of court matter.
And despite this entire court ordeal, you were still fired, is that correct?
Yes, but I mean, it was going to happen eventually, and I already saw I had no future with Lush, so it didn't really make that much.
Thank you, Rather. No further questions.
Very well. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Durst, why did you truly feel like your time at Lush had come to a close, and why did you not see a future at Lush anymore?
Yeah, after I attempted to raise my concerns surrounding Drufo, that's when I received the poor performance reviews. So, and after Blake had ignored my concerns from it, I wanted to work with a company who would value me.
Thank you, Ms. Durst. I have no further questions.
Very well. Please call your next witness. You may step down.
Your Honor, the plaintiff calls Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand.
Dr. Casey Rogers. Dr. Rogers, you remain under oath.
Yes, Your Honor.
And you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Dr. Rogers. Could you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Casey Rogers. Rogers is spelled Rogers.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Are you currently employed?
Yes, I'm currently a professor at UC Berkeley.
And what do you teach at UC Berkeley?
At UC Berkeley, I am a professor of horticulture and entomology.
Did you receive any degrees for this occupation?
Yes, I got my PhD in horticulture and entomology from UC Berkeley. And before that, I got my bachelor's degree in agriculture and chemistry from CSU.
And do you have any work experience in these fields?
Yes, I do. Prior to earning my PhD and becoming a professor, I worked in an environmental chemistry and toxicology lab as a research analyst.
And have you published anything on these subjects?
Yes, I've published numerous scholarly articles on the negative effects that chemicals may have on the body, which includes the fertilizer Drufo.
And where have these articles been used?
These articles have been used before litigation boards in order to make safety recommendations for product and user safety.
Your Honor, I offer Dr. Casey Rogers as an expert in the areas of agriculture, environmental chemistry, and toxicology, and the negative effects of Drufo, pursuant to Rule 702.
Okay, agriculture, environmental what?
Environmental chemistry and toxicology. More specifically, the negative effects of Drufo.
Okay, any objection or voir dire?
Yes, Your Honor, a brief voir dire.
Please.
Okay, Dr. Rogers, it is true that you are not a medical doctor, correct?
That's true.
You have not gone to med school,
Not yet.
and you haven't received any medical training.
Not formally.
The effects of Drufo on the human body would be related to medicine, correct?
Well, one could say that, but one could also say that it's directly related to chemistry.
I'm looking for a yes or no answer. I'm not asking about chemistry right now. I'm asking about the field of medicine. Can non-Hodgkin's lymphoma be relevant in the field of medicine?
In the field of medicine, yes, I believe cancer is relevant.
Your Honor, for these reasons, the defense objects to Dr. Rogers being admitted as an expert specifically in the field of Drufel's negative effect, as that implies its effect on humans, which the witness does not have enough education in.
Response, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers has written numerous scholarly articles on the negative effects of Drufo, and later on will share the study she conducted regarding the carcinogenic properties of Drufo. Therefore, she's more than qualified as she has experience in this area.
All right. You have offered her for a fairly lengthy line of expertise. Involved in that line is the word toxicology. Toxicology is a specific study in the medical field, and without a medical background, I think probably does not qualify under toxicology. However, she seems to have a background that's qualifying in agriculture, environmental chemistry, and possibly the negative effects of Drufo by her studies that are outside the field of medicine. So I will admit her as an expert in the area of agriculture, environmental chemistry, and the negative effects of DRUFO, not within the study of medicine.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, how did you get into DRUFO?
Well, I first heard about DRUFO when it first was released into the market, and it was very concerning to say the least because I kept hearing all of these negative reports.
And after hearing these negative reports, what did you decide to do?
Well, in true scientist fashion, I decided to do more research, of course, and upon this research, I stumbled upon this study from the UK that said DRUFO was known to be carcinogenic.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. This is offered for the effect on the listener as it is going to prompt her to conduct her own study on the carcinogenic effects of DRUFO.
May I respond?
Yes.
I believe that the results of this study would unfairly influence the jury. So regardless of their intent of whether it's taken for the truth of the matter asserted or not, I believe that the prejudicial value would outweigh the hope.
Let me kind of explain a little bit more about why I'm going to permit this line. First of all, an expert is permitted to rely upon the expertise of others and to conduct research, and the objection to that research on hearsay is inappropriate. So I'm going to permit the testimony to be allowed in this line of questioning. So overruled.
Would you like to continue, Dr. Rogers?
Yes. Anyway, after doing more research, I stumbled upon this study from the UK that said DRUFO was known to be carcinogenic in rats.
And after discovering this study, what did you do?
Well, once again, I am a scientist, so I decided to conduct my own study to test the validity of this other study that showed DRUFO was carcinogenic in rats. But I decided to do it in humans because humans can be a little bit different than rats.
And can you explain this study to the jury?
Yes, of course. So in my study, I took 3 groups of people. The first group had never been exposed to DRUFO. The second group had been exposed to DRUFO on occasion. And the third group had been exposed to DRUFO on a regular, maybe almost daily basis. And I monitored these groups to see what would happen when they were exposed.
How frequently did you monitor these groups?
I monitored these groups over a period of many years.
And what were your findings?
Well, what I found was actually quite alarming. I found that the group who had been exposed to DRUFO on an everyday, regular basis was 10 times more likely to develop a form of cancer, which include endocrine and exocrine varieties, which includes non-Hodgkin lymphoma, than those who had never been exposed to DRUFO. I would just like to reiterate that the group who had been exposed to DRUFO on a regular, maybe daily basis was 10 times more likely to develop a form of cancer than the group who had never been exposed. And to me, that's just not a coincidence. So one can only draw a link between DRUFO and non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Right. You mentioned that people in your study began to develop non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Based on your observations, what's the survival rate of that cancer?
Objection, Your Honor, outside the scope of this expert witness.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. Considering that she has been entered on the negative effects of DRUFO and in addition has this knowledge from her subjects in her study, she should be able to testify on this. It is in the scope of her expertise.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yeah, you don't have to. I'm going to sustain the objection.
Okay. How does one begin to develop non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
Objection, Your Honor, outside the scope of this expert witness.
Your response?
Yes, Your Honor. Considering that people in her own study developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma, she should be able to testify as to how, in her expert opinion, they did this or they began to develop it.
Yeah, it's an odd question. How did they begin to develop it? It kind of leaves a little bit more speculation open. So I'm rephrase the question. Let's back up and rephrase the question so there won't be objection.
How did the people in your study, in your professional opinion, begin, or what was it that, in your study, what was it that gave people non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
Well, in my professional opinion, after monitoring these groups for a period of years, I saw that they developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma, which I did more research on and I learned is not genetic and can only be developed through environmental factors, such as coming into contact with the skin or the respiratory system. And I mean, I can only assume that's how Miss Dakota Weirs got her non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Objection, Your
Dr.
Honor. Lack of foundation.
Would you like me to
Yes,
establish?
I am anxiously awaiting.
Okay, my apologies. Can I just thank you? No further questions? Or
I don't think you have to. Restate the objection so that she can understand what it is that's your objection.
The defense is objecting to lack of foundation as they have not established how this witness would know about Dakota Weir's case.
All right, now you can respond to that if you like.
considering she has, I can establish foundation. Have you ever examined Dakota's medical records?
Yes, I personally have looked at all of Miss Dakota Weir's medical records.
And based on these medical records and your expertise in the exposure to Drufo, do you believe she could have developed it from her non-Hodgkin lymphoma from being exposed to Drufo?
In my professional opinion, I do believe that Miss Weirs could have developed her non-Hodgkin lymphoma after coming into contact with Drufo.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. No further questions.
Very well. Is there a cross-exam?
Yes, Your Honor. May I begin?
Hang on just a short time, please. Yes, you may proceed.
Okay, so let's get right into things. Before I get into the line of questioning, I would just like to clarify something in your direct examination. So you said that your study found links between the use of Drufo and development of non-Hodgkin lymphoma, correct?
Yes.
But your study didn't look just at non-Hodgkin lymphoma, it looked at cancer in general, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, cool. Now, moving on to the time period before you had conducted your study. You stated in your direct testimony today that you had seen a report that the chemical was carcinogenic in rats, correct?
Yes, I did.
And for years, you had been reading reports about its potentially negative side effects?
Yes.
And when the chemical was first released to market, you believed that it was rushed.
Oh, absolutely.
And the study you conducted was done after the chemical was released to market.
Yes.
So therefore, you had developed your own opinions about the chemical prior to conducting your study.
Well, not necessarily. I am a scientist and I do believe in this method. And had my study shown different results, I would be more than willing and, in fact, happy to change my opinion. However, my study just didn't conclude those.
So just to clarify, prior to the chemical being released, it was your opinion that it was rushed to market?
Yes, that was my opinion.
And that was from before you had conducted your study?
Yes.
Okay, now moving on to the study itself. As a professor, I'm sure you're familiar with the scientific method, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
And so in the scientific method, all variables are controlled, meaning they're kept the same, except for one variable, which is changed in order to see its results.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, let's look at how you failed to do this. So in your study, you looked at those who were often, sometimes, and never exposed to the chemical DRUFO, correct?
That's correct.
And those who were often exposed to the chemical were mostly farmers or gardeners?
Yes,
And those who were never exposed to the chemical were mostly not farmers or gardeners.
that's correct.
And farmers and gardeners oftentimes use pesticide,
Yes, I would say so.
but people who are not farmers or gardeners usually don't use pesticide as much.
Well, it really depends on their lifestyle.
Okay. And pesticide can cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, correct?
It can.
Okay. Now, farmers also use a variety of agricultural products, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Many of these are agricultural products that the general public may not be using.
Yeah.
And you have concerns over many agricultural products, not just Lush fertilizer.
Could you be more specific, please?
I'm just asking, do you have concerns over other products, like other agricultural products besides DRUFO?
Well, considering a shovel could be considered to be an agricultural product, I don't feel comfortable answering your question without being more specific.
Okay, you made a witness statement in today's trial, correct?
I did.
And in this witness statement, you said, although I am concerned about many agricultural products, DRUFO caught my attention when it first came to market. Those are your own words, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you only looked at the use of the chemical DRUFO, though. You didn't account for other variables.
Yes.
Okay. And furthermore, your study was not peer reviewed,
No, it was not.
and your study was not replicated.
Not yet, but I think it will be in the future.
Okay. Now, as part of the study, you looked at ways to prevent exposure to DRUFO, correct?
Yes.
And you recommended wearing long sleeve clothing and pants, correct?
Yes, I did.
You also especially recommended wearing a mask.
Oh, for sure.
And you have reviewed Dakota Weir's employment records as part of this case.
Yes.
And you have also reviewed Ms. Weir's medical records.
Yes, I have.
So you know that Ms. Weir's was not wearing protective equipment while using these fertilizers.
She was not, unfortunately.
Okay. Finally, I'd like to conclude this just by clarifying one thing. Your study found a correlation between the use of the chemical DRUFO and development of cancer, correct?
Yes, it did.
And correlation does not necessarily prove causation.
Well, not necessarily, but as I said earlier, 10 times versus 10 times more likely, to me, correlation in that case can be a little bit closer to causation.
But once again, it cannot prove causation.
No.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Well, any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Very well. Call your next witness.
The plaintiff rests.
I understand we're not permitted any halftime motions, so I won't invite them. Is the defense prepared to go forward with its first witness?
Yes, Your Honor, at this time, the defense calls Ms. Blake Doncourt to the stand.
Blake Doncourt. You are remaining under oath from previously being sworn. Let's see who is. All right. Very well, Ms. Holland, you may proceed.
Good evening, Ms. Doncourt. Could you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
My name is Blake Doncourt, Doncourt.
Now, to begin, Ms. Doncourt, what is your job?
I am the Chief Executive Officer or CEO of Lush Fertilizer.
Now, describe how you came about owning this company.
Well, since 2000, I have grown this company from an unknown producer of fertilizers to one of the world's largest producers of yard and commercial fertilizers.
Now, what is your philosophy behind this company?
Well, I believe that green grass is part of the American dream, and with that comes the responsibility of environmental protection.
How did this mindset bring about your success?
Well, Lush Fertilizer's success has allowed me to direct 10% of our annual profits towards charities, which in turn are working hard.
Objection relevance.
Response?
Your Honor, this is extremely relevant under Rule 406, the habit and routine practice. This company's practice is meticulous, diligent, and incapable of releasing a harmful chemical into the environment, as well as this establishes a lack of financial bias in this case, which is relevant in this trial today.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. I believe that in this case, we are here to discuss Drufo specifically, specifically in regards to carcinogenic qualities. And I don't believe that Lush is donating to charity or their environmentalism or Blake Doncourt's personal opinions towards the environment has relevance in that matter.
Response, Your Honor?
Well, it has a little bit of a relevance, but I'm concerned that its probative value is outweighed by the chance of prejudice a bit here. I will allow it briefly, but let's don't harp on how wonderful this Donforth is before too long, okay?
All right, Your Honor. May I proceed with questioning?
Yeah, please go ahead. Just
repeating my question, Ms. Doncourt, what is your, how did this mindset, how did this philosophy bring about your success?
Well, as I stated, Lush Fertilizer's success allows me to direct 10% of our annual profits towards charities. And these charities are working hard to decrease the world's global nitrogen footprint.
Now, my last question on this, have you personally been recognized for any for these charitable contributions?
I have. I've received many humanitarian awards for my works, and I've even been personally nominated by the United Nations Champion of the Earth Award in 2020.
Now, this prestigious award recognizes sustainability. What actions do you take in your company that uphold this environmental protection?
Careful and extensive.
Your Honor. I'd like to re-raise my objection, as I believe that the witness is now going on further into this topic and it's leaving the realm of relevance.
okay, so state your objection more specifically, please.
Yes, my objection would be that this is would be relevance in addition to the fact that the prejudicial value would outweigh the probative of these statements that Ms. Doncourt is making.
All right, Ms. Holland.
My response would be that this question is asking to lead into the procedures and regularly conducted processes such as the testing on the chemical Drufo and how recognized environmental sustainability does not line up with the allowance of a harmful chemical to be entered into the market.
All right. I think, counsel, she's actually now beginning something that's far more relevant. And so I'm going to permit it at this point. The objection's overruled.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, this prestigious award recognizes sustainability. What actions do you take in your company to uphold this environmental protection?
Careful and extensive research. I've devoted an entire team of experts to enhance our product development and even a team to try and find problems in these products. And we've conducted various in-house studies to determine its safety.
Now, are there any other steps that you take to ensure product safety regulation?
Well, we maintain a very close relationship with the EPA, which is the Environmental Protection Agency, who has given us the clear to put our products onto the market without any need under federal state law for any warnings on these packagings either.
Now, shifting directions, which product is specifically being contested today?
Drufo.
And why is this?
Well, unfortunately, due to tragic circumstances, Dakota Weirs has brought accusations towards this chemical as being harmful and carcinogenic, which are untrue.
Now, how do you feel about these accusations?
Well, I am very hopeful for Dakota's swift recovery, and I hold no hard feelings towards her, but I must defend my company and the principles for which it stands.
Now, shifting directions once again, what is your relationship with Carson Durst?
Well, Carson Durst is a close family friend of mine.
And how did Carson Durst become employed for Lush Fertilizer?
Carson Durst became employed when I found out that she was having some trouble finding a job after college, so I offered her an internship at my company.
Can you describe Carson Durst's employment history for us?
Well, I had big hopes for her. I did care about her and she was close to me, but many complaints were being brought up about her work ethic and other things. And so we followed procedure and put her on a performance improvement plan. However, I was still receiving many complaints, and in truth, she just wasn't handling her job with care.
So what did you do about this?
Well, I did have to put my connections with her aside and I let her go.
And what happened next?
Well, Carson Durst became employed with Tara's Greenery, which is our biggest competitor. And this violated a non-disclosure contract that she had signed with us at the beginning of her employment. And this was taken up in a separate court case.
Now, what was the result of this court case?
Well, we followed all the steps necessary, and it settled on a 6-month delay for her employment at Tara's Greenery.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, the defense has no further questions.
All right, any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to proceed?
Hang on just a second. All right, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, Ms. Doncourt.
Good evening.
I'd like to begin by asking, you were formerly married to Morgan Doncourt, is that correct?
That is correct.
And
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
Go ahead, respond.
Yes, Your Honor. I'm going to a line of questioning that will go towards Ms. Doncourt's financial bias in this case and will prove to be very relevant.
I will allow it, but please do establish relevance very quickly. Overruled.
Ms. Doncourt, you are now in the process of a rather contentious divorce.
Yes, I would say so.
And a judge has ordered you to pay your ex-spouse a significant sum of money each month.
Well, yes, it was a bit unfair, but I mean, it wasn't like I had any trouble paying these.
So you're now responsible, in addition to this, for paying the investors who provided your company with seed funds, correct?
Well, yes, but as I said, I didn't have any financial trouble with this. I had enough money to do so.
Right. So, but you would say that you have a considerable amount of financial responsibilities?
I mean, you could say that, but again, I didn't feel primarily pressured by this divorce proceeding.
Ms. Doncourt, are you aware of a process called baking?
Yes, I am.
And are you aware that baking your fertilizer would be the only way to guarantee that it is not carcinogenic?
Well, I wouldn't say exactly that it's the only way. It is a considerable way, but to be fair, based on the various in-house studies that we had made, there was little to no risk.
Please, my question is just, it would be the only way to 100% guarantee that it is not carcinogenic.
Fair, yes, I would say so.
And you heard Carson Durst testify in court today, correct?
I did.
And you heard her testify that in the report compiled by your own scientists, they recommend—
Objection, Your Honor. This is a violation of our pretrial matters of constructive sequestration of the witnesses.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes, please.
Yes, I actually believe that according to Rule 5.3 of the competition rules, actual sequestration is not allowed under the mock trial rules. I think there was a slight misunderstanding with that earlier. And according to mock trial, witnesses cannot be constructively or physically sequestered.
Well, they can be constructively sequestered, certainly, but not physically. And if the question is relating to what a previous witness has already said, then I think that's fair. So is that where we're going with this?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, then I'll allow it. Overruled.
Thank you. So, Ms. Doncourt, you heard Carson Durst testify earlier today, correct?
I did.
And you heard her testify that in the report compiled by your own scientists, they recommend baking your fertilizer.
Can you elaborate? Are you talking about the amortization table? Or
I'm not. I'm talking about Carson Durst's statement today in court that in the report compiled by your scientists, they recommend baking your fertilizer.
I'm sorry, are you asking me that I did hear it, or do you want me to elaborate on it?
No, I'm just asking whether or not you heard Carson say that.
Oh, well, yes, I did.
But isn't it true that by not baking your fertilizer, you would increase your profits by 6% in the first year and by an additional 2% per year after that?
That is true. We need to pay for these seed funds, or else we're not going to have a company.
Right. So to confirm, you needed these additional earnings to pay back the investors who provided your company with seed funds.
Well, without this, we wouldn't have a company to sell our good fertilizer.
Correct. So you chose not to bake your fertilizer because you would otherwise not be able to meet your financial responsibilities?
There was little to no risk of that
Objection,
elevator.
Your Honor. Asked and answered.
Permission to respond?
Yeah.
I have already asked about the spending habits of Ms. Doncourt, but I'm just clarifying that these extra earnings were in fact required to meet all of her financial responsibilities.
Yeah, I'll allow it. Oh, Joe.
So to reiterate, you say in your statement that baking would be too costly for the small risk it would eliminate.
Yes, that's true.
And that small risk is ensuring 100% that your consumers are not exposed to dangerous carcinogens?
Well, due to our various in-house studies, we had already determined that there was no need to bake it.
Okay, but you did allocate 10% of Lush's profits to charities, correct?
Yes, we are very proud of doing so.
Yeah, so donating to charities and paying back to your ex-spouse was in the budget, but eliminating carcinogens from your product wasn't?
Well, I mean, we have already established that in our in-house studies, we didn't find nothing was prevented to me. Sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Durst. I have no further questions.
Very well. And a redirect.
Yes, Your Honor, briefly. Now, Ms. Doncourt, why did you not put a warning label on your product?
There was no need to under federal or state law. I mean, how are we going to put a warning label on there when there was—
Objection, Your Honor. Outside of the scope of my cross, I do not believe that I talked about the warning label on my cross.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor, we were talking about the risk assessment of the chemical compound Drufo and its dangers. I believe this was addressed in the cross.
Yeah, peripherally, I'll allow it.
Can you please repeat the question?
Yes. Why did you not put a warning label on your product?
There was no need under federal or state law to do so. I mean, putting it on there is just an assumption based on our company, and we're not going to start lying to our customers. We're going to tell them stuff that they know so that we don't scare them off, or we're going to tell them the truth.
And the point of baking your fertilizer has been raised. Do you bake your fertilizer?
We do not.
What is your reasoning behind not baking them?
Well, there is little to no risk that it alleviates. Besides, based on these in-house studies that we've already conducted and the extensive research that we had already done, there was nothing that had been presented to me that it was carcinogenic. So why would we pay for something that simply wasn't there?
And has your product met the standards of the federally backed Environmental Protection Agency?
Absolutely. These people are meant to tell us what we need to do and what warnings we need to put, and they did not tell us we needed to put anything.
And my last question, I understand that these are personal matters, but could you please describe your financial situation and how it would impact your testimony today?
Well, with my ex-spouse, I needed to pay her some money every month, but these do not financially really— this does not provide financial bias towards me at all. I already had the money I needed to donate to all these charities and to pay off the capitalists that provided our company with seed funds. So if I already had this money, this really didn't affect me at all. I still had enough to take care of myself and my ex-spouse as well.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Very well. Call your next witness.
I apologize, Your Honor.
Not a problem. Technology is our friend and our enemy at the same point. So go ahead.
All right. Your Honor, may I call Skylar Weirs to the stand?
Skylar Weir. Ms. Weirs, you are still under oath. Let me see here. Mr. Bauer, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mrs. Weirs. How old are you and what do you do?
I'm 20 and I'm an investigative journalist.
And what is your connection to Dakota Weirs in this case?
Dakota Weirs is my twin sibling.
And before Mrs. Weirs contracted non-Hodgkin lymphoma, what were you doing?
Well, right before my sister contracted non-Hodgkin lymphoma, I just so happened to write an article questioning the popular narrative out there that there is any link, if a causal one, between Drufo and non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
So you're a journalist.
Yes.
And as being a journalist, have you written any papers?
Yes, I've written extensively on agritech and GMOs and Drufo.
And for who do you write these articles?
I write my articles for the Rationalist Society, who publishes the Rationalist magazine.
And what sort of articles does the Rationalist publish?
Well, the Rationalist Society is a quarterly scientific education magazine. So we publish things about highly controversial scientific topics like GMOs, climate change, vaccines, etc.
And as a journalist, have you ever written on agritech, and in this case, Drufo?
Yes, I wrote an entire series specifically picked by my editor to write an extensive series on agritech and Drufo.
And what is Drufo's importance to today's case?
Well, today we are debating whether or not Drufo causes cancer as part of lush fertilizer.
Okay, and how long did you spend researching and reading publications about Drufo and agritech companies?
I spent almost a year doing extensive research, basically devoting my whole life to this project.
And in this year that you researched, what sort of publications did you read?
Well, honestly, researching is my favorite part of the whole process. I just love doing a deep dive into all these. So what I'd like to do is I like to start wide and narrow in. So I studied various publications by agritech companies and then tracked down the studies referenced in those.
Okay, and besides publications by agritech companies, have you read or studied publications from any other source of information?
Yes, I also studied various publications by government sources such as the United States Department of Agriculture, or USDA for short, and the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, or NASA for short.
So many of the sources and publications from which you read and studied came from the US government themselves.
Yes, I like to make sure my sources are as trustworthy as possible.
So in this year that you studied agritech and Drufo, would you say that you're very well educated on matters of agritech?
Yes, I would. And honestly, I don't think anybody outside of the USDA and the NASDA have more experience or a wide view of agritech than I do.
So would you say that you're well educated on the matter of agritech?
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, at this point, I would like to enter Skylar Weirs as an expert containing in matters containing modern agritech and Drufo.
Any objection or voir dire?
Yes, Your Honor, permission to voir dire.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Ms. Weirs. You have no formal degree in toxicology, yes?
No, toxicology isn't really my specialty. It's more agritech.
You also have no formal degree in agritech, however, correct?
No, I really believe more in research and experience.
Right, you don't have a single college degree, correct?
No, I do not.
You also have no working experience in the field of modern agritech?
No, but I have a lot of experience in research and I've done extensive research.
Yes, the only knowledge you have is from this mere year of research, correct?
Yeah, I basically devoted every second of my life during this year.
Your Honor, I object to this witness being entered as according to Rule 702, their scientific, technical, or other specialized knowledge will not assist the jury in understanding this case as they're not qualified in the area of modern agritech. While I understand Ms. Weirs only needs one of 5 factors, being knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education, she has none of the factors excluding a small amount of knowledge she gained from a mere year of research.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Of course, please.
Your Honor, Skylar Weirs falls under every characterization needed to testify as a witness under Rule 702. Under Rule 702, an expert must have scientific, technical, or other specialized knowledge that will assist the trier of fact. This is exactly what Skylar Weirs possesses. She has studied agritech and Drufo for over a year extensively, reading publications from agritech companies themselves and also from verified sources such as the US government. Ms. Weirs has also written several publications on agritech and Drufo. The argument that a college degree limits Mrs. Weir's understanding on these topics is irrelevant, as today, in today's age with the internet and with technology, we can access an even higher level of education from the internet than arguably universities, Your Honor.
All right, I have reviewed the pretrial order that has been signed by Judge Staub, and it lists the factors found in Rule 702. The 5 factors are knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education. I find there is knowledge. Skill is a little iffy. Experience, a little iffy. Training, I'm not so sure there. But education, she is self-educated. There's no exception to education. There's no requirement that education be formal. So I think knowledge and education, self-education, does get her over the substantially low bar of being able to provide a little bit of information as an expert that puts her at a level above the average juror, which is really all we need. So I'm going to permit her to be qualified as an expert in modern agritech and also to testify concerning Drufo, but objections as to the level of her expertise during her testimony might be appropriate. But I'll accept her, and I will overrule the objection.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Mrs. Weirs, how has Lush Fertilizer been treated by the public?
Well, Lush Fertilizer has been the target of many pseudoscientific hit jobs where people like to spread misinformation about the company.
And do these pseudoscientific hit jobs or PR campaigns to ruin reputations happen often?
Yeah, they happen all the time, mostly by the older sector of agritech who are don't want to be replaced by new and innovative technology.
And for a foundation, has one of these PR campaigns that you know of affected any company?
Just off the top of my head, I can think of the company Monsanto, who was the victim of one of these PR campaigns. They were on the brink of effectively monopolizing and revolutionizing the market for corn seed genomics and herbicides when this happened.
And did this PR campaign succeed?
Unfortunately, it did, and it resulted in many farmers in places like India and sub-Saharan Africa, where they struggle with crop yields. It made them scared to try GMOs, which have been shown to increase crop yields. So it actually hurts these poorer countries.
Okay, so similar to Monsanto, is it possible that a PR campaign may have been conducted against Lush Fertilizer?
Yes, I believe that's exactly what's happening right now.
Thank you. Now, on the subject of grass seed products, typically, what are these products meant to do?
Well, grass seed products kill the unwanted weeds in the grass, but because weeds like clover.
Objection, relevance.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. As today's matters concern grass seed products, understanding what grass seed products are meant to do and effectively understanding their point and purpose is essential in understanding how Mrs. Weirs may have contracted non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. I feel as though opposing counsel should focus on the grass seed product of Drufo and doesn't need to talk about these other grass seed products and how they contribute to weeds.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yeah, I really want to hear the relevance here. So go ahead, explain that to us.
Yes, Your Honor. Well, this question of what grass seed products are meant to do is simply to lay foundation. It's to lay foundation for what Lush Fertilizer's grass seed products are meant to do, which are essential to today's case.
I will allow it very briefly, but let's don't major on minors. The objection's overruled.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, I'll quickly re-ask the question. Now, what are grass seed products meant to do?
Grass seed products kill unwanted weeds, which are essential for nitrogen in the soil. So these grass seed products have to replace this nitrogen with synthetic nitrogen.
And does synthetic nitrogen have any harmful effects?
Yes, synthetic nitrogen is extremely harmful to both people and the environment.
Now, how is DRUFO effectively proven to be a big revolution in the agritech sector?
Well, DRUFO is an extremely effective bonding agent. So what it does is it essentially bonds to the other active ingredients in lush fertilizers, such as synthetic nitrogen and potassium and phosphorus, and it prevents these other harmful substances, such as synthetic nitrogen, from being washed away into the groundwater, thus making it safer for the public.
So with these bonding agents, how often does DRUFO need to be applied each year?
DRUFO only needs to be applied 1 to 2 times per year.
1 to 2 times. Now, how often do other fertilizers need to be applied?
Well, in comparison, other fertilizers need to be applied upwards of 5 or 6 times per year.
And how does this reduction of application increase safety in products with DRUFO?
Well, because DRUFO contains synthetic nitrogen and is an effective bonding agent, it doesn't need to be applied as often, meaning that these harmful chemicals are exposed to both the environment and the public much less.
Now, besides DRUFO acting as a fertilizer, is DRUFO anything else?
DRUFO also acts as an effective pesticide.
And what benefits does DRUFO have as a pesticide?
Well, most other pesticides you'll find on the market contain harmful carcinogens, such as glyphosate or arsenic. And because DRUFO is a pesticide, there is no need for these known carcinogens.
Okay, and what sort of harmful effects can glyphosate and arsenic have?
Well, according to the National Center for Research on Cancer, these are both classified as known carcinogens. And so when these get into the groundwater and get out to the public, they can cause very harmful diseases. So DRUFO prevents that by acting as a...
But is there any conclusive link between DRUFO being carcinogenic?
No, unlike these other dangerous pesticides, DRUFO has not been found to cause non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
So how does DRUFO compare to other carcinogens?
It is much, much safer.
Okay. Now, finally, how has Lush Fertilizer taken any other incentives to reduce the nitrogen contamination in our planet?
Yes, Lush Fertilizer helps the public by donating 10% of its annual profits to help clean nitrogen runoff and prevent this from reaching the public.
Thank you. That is all. No further questions, Your Honor.
Very well. Is there a cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, you and your twin Dakota have never had the stereotypically close twin relationship, yes?
That's true, but we still love each other.
Right, but some people even suggest that you are here today to undermine her, correct?
Some people say that, but it's definitely not true.
Your writing generates your income, correct?
Yes, I'm a freelance journalist.
But your articles have hardly been lucrative, is that correct?
Well, I've been having a little trouble finding work just because of the nature of my articles.
Right, because they haven't been lucrative, yes?
Yes, just because they're so controversial, yes.
And you are also have a history of gambling, yes?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. This gambling goes to the potential financial bias of this witness, therefore going to her credibility of testimony.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Please.
Your Honor, financial bias does not apply in this case, as Skylar Weirs testifying against her sister goes against all financial bias, as if she supported her sister and she would win the case, her gambling debts would be eliminated. Therefore, financial bias does not apply in this case.
Hey, counsel, if you can explain to me how her financial bottom line would be improved depending on how she testifies today, if you'd help me understand that.
Coupled with her bias with her sister's relationship and the gambling, she would want to testify as an expert witness in today's case to both undermine her sister and to gain money to eliminate her gambling debt.
Okay, how's she going to gain the money?
By testifying in today's trial today.
Oh, she's being paid. I haven't heard that part.
Your Honor, nowhere in this trial does it state Mrs. Weir's being paid for her testimony.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to sustain that objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Your parents were helping you financially, yes?
Yes, they were for a while.
This was until your dad cut you off, correct?
Yeah, because of my decision to not go to college.
You would never claim that there are no risks from modern agricultural products, yes?
No, I wouldn't say that because every product comes with a little bit of risk.
Right, and every product on the market has several well-known carcinogens, yes?
Well, I wouldn't say every. I would say that Lush Fertilizers product does not, but other ones do.
Right, but you did say in your statement that nitrogen does lead to cancer in some scenarios, yes?
Yes, and Drufo prevents that.
But Lush has the active ingredient of nitrogen, doesn't it?
Yes, you're right. I see what you're saying now. It does.
You also say that no chemical fertilizer will ever be truly safe, yes?
Yeah, I would say that's true. They do contain chemicals, as is their purpose.
Thank you. No further questions.
Very well. Any be direct.
Yes, Your Honor, very briefly. Now, Mrs. Weirs, in your year of studying Agritech and Drufo, through your endless publications that you have read, have you come across a single direct link to Drufo and cancer?
No, I've studied extensively. I have reviewed many very valid and reputable sources, and I have not found one single link that proves that Drufo can cause cancer.
Thank you. At this time, Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Very well. Please call your next witness. You may step down.
The defense calls Dr. Devin Williams.
Dr. Devin Williams. Dr. Williams, you remain under oath. All right, sir, you may proceed.
Okay. Good afternoon, Dr. Williams. Let's start with your work background. Where do you currently work?
Well, currently I am the lead toxicologist at Lush Fertilizer.
Okay, and how long have you been working as the lead toxicologist at Lush Fertilizer?
Oh gosh, it must be about a decade now that I've been working there, but for the past 7 years, I've been working as the lead toxicologist in the product and development engineering team.
And over these past decade or so, what sort of tasks have you been performing?
Well, primarily as the lead toxicologist, what I do is review studies on how Drufo works and whether the effects of Drufo affect our biological systems.
And what sort of skills have you developed from doing these tasks?
Well, I've developed a lot of skills as a toxicologist, mostly with analyzing data given to me by our scientists, both in-house and scientists out of house who also review data about Drufo.
Okay, I am now requesting for my co-counsel to screen share what has been marked for identification purposes as Exhibit 9.
Well, before it's admitted, it shouldn't be shared to the jury.
Yes, that's right, Your Honor. I'm sorry, I forgot about the
Oh, that's
preliminary.
okay. I know it's a little unusual.
Yes.
We're all
Okay.
going to get through this. It's fine.
So are you familiar with Exhibit 9, Dr. Williams?
Would you mind pulling it up just so I can be sure?
For this trial, we won't be pulling it up until it's been admitted into
Well,
evidence.
tell her what it is, counsel.
Okay.
Yeah, that might help her.
Exhibit 9, your copy of your CV.
Yes, I am quite familiar with that.
Okay, and what is this?
Well, this is a copy of my curriculum vitae, which outlines all my educational and experiential background.
Do you update this document regularly?
I do quite regularly. I tend to get a lot of degrees, so I have to keep it well updated.
And is creating a CV a usual task in your practice?
It is. Every time I participate in another educational endeavor or professional endeavor, I do update it.
At this time, the defense moves to admit Exhibit 9, the CV of Dr. Williams, into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 9 is admitted.
We would now like to request that co-counsel be allowed to screen share it to publish it to the jury.
That's fine.
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay, now using this document, outline your educational background for us.
Of course. Well, as you can see, I got my bachelor's degree in toxicology from the University of Utah. The rest of my education was received at CSU right here in Colorado, where I received a master's degree in pharmacotoxicology and my PhD in forensic toxicology.
And what is toxicology?
Basically, what toxicology is it analyzes how environmental and chemical substances affect our biological systems.
And do those biological systems include the human body?
It does, primarily, yes.
And how is the study of toxicology relevant in today's trial?
Well, it's extremely relevant. As a chemical agent, DRUFO needs to be analyzed on how it can affect our human body to make sure that it's extremely safe for consumers.
At this time, Your Honor, the defense moves to admit Dr. Williams as an expert in the field of toxicology.
Expert in, say again?
In an expert in the field of toxicology.
Okay, toxicology. Any objection or voir dire?
No, Your Honor.
Very well. Dr. Williams will be admitted as an expert before this court in the field of toxicology. You may continue.
Okay, before I continue, I'd like to request that my co-counsel now remove this document from screen share. Okay, so let's begin with your experience with the chemical DRUFO. Are you familiar with what that is?
I am well familiar with DRUFO.
And how do you know what DRUFO is?
Well, as the lead toxicologist at Lush Fertilizer, my main focus is focusing on DRUFO, their primary chemical agent, and understanding how it could affect the human body.
And why was the chemical DRUFO created?
So basically why DRUFO was created is with other fertilizers, there's a major problem with something known as eutrophication, which includes a runoff of excess nutrients into the water that we drink out of. Now, obviously, this is extremely detrimental to health as those excess nitrogens and phosphates can severely hurt our biological systems. DRUFO is an incredible agent that binds the nitrogen to the soil so that it doesn't run off into this water supply.
Okay, well, moving on now. Is the chemical DRUFO used worldwide?
No, unfortunately, it is banned in the EU, but not because of any carcinogenic effects, but merely because of some faulty lab conditions.
Okay, and now, are you familiar with the study conducted by Dr. Casey Rogers?
Yes, I am familiar with the study.
And have you used the study in your research for today's case?
I have. It was part of my analysis on the effects of DRUFO in the human body.
And what are your thoughts on the study?
Well, simply, I thought the study was not handled with care. What Dr. Rogers did is compare apples to oranges. What he did was compare farmers who use a multitude of chemicals and have a vastly different lifestyle than the average person to someone who doesn't use any chemicals. Such a thing just doesn't equate, and there's too many variables that aren't accounted for. Additionally, the study wasn't peer-reviewed and it wasn't replicated, completely eliminating the scientific merit of it.
How important is it for studies to be peer-reviewed and replicated in the scientific field?
Oh, extremely important. It's one of the primary things of the scientific method. Without it, it just isn't a valid study.
Okay, now moving back onto your own opinions, what sort of data have you reviewed to formulate your opinions about the chemical DRUFO?
Well, as the lead toxicologist, I get all of the information we do from in-house studies. Additionally, I take those outside sources like Dr. Rogers' study and along with other research.
Okay, and how many of these studies have you looked at over your career?
Oh gosh, too many to count. I mean, it has been a decade.
And what valid studies have you seen linking the use of the chemical DRUFO to development of cancer?
Absolutely none. There's not been a single study linking DRUFO to cancer.
And to add on to that, what valid studies have you seen linking DRUFO to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma specifically?
Absolutely none.
So based on this, is the chemical Drufo carcinogenic?
No, based on all of the information I've gathered over the past decade, there's just no way that Drufo can cause cancer.
And can the chemical cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Absolutely not.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Very well. Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Good evening, Ms. Williams.
Good evening.
You said you lead the research labs at Lush, correct?
Yes, I am the lead toxicologist.
And you've been working at this company for about a decade?
Yes, I have.
So you admit that you have a pretty significant financial bias in the outcome of today's case, right?
Well, not really. I am employed by them, but I'm also an associate professor. But I'm just a well-educated toxicologist. I could receive a job anywhere. Currently, I have a financial bias or a financial obligation to Lush, but I mean, in the long run, it doesn't really matter.
But you do have this financial bias, correct?
Minimally for the time being, but not extensively.
Okay, and when you started working at Lush, half of the original Drufo development team had left the company, is that right?
Objection, relevance.
Response.
Yes, please.
Your Honor, this goes to show the issues within Lush's research labs and the chaos that was occurring when Drufo was being researched.
Response.
The defense fails to see how the number of people working there illustrates any sort of chaos within the company.
I tell you what, I'm going to allow it to a limited degree, but please establish some relevance here, please. I'll overrule for now.
Thank you, Your Honor. So just to ask that question one more time, Ms. Williams, half of the original Drufo team had left the company when you first started working at Lush.
Unfortunately, half of them had left, yes.
So am I correct in saying that scientists were coming and going at various stages during the analysis of this chemical?
Well, other scientists were, sorry, but I wasn't. I was there for 10 years and was able to see it through when Lush was able to become more stable and really put all their effort into researching as they have for the past couple years.
But Ms. Weirs, just to answer my question, scientists were coming and going.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered. The witness has answered this question.
Response.
Your Honor, the witness has not answered this question. I believe that it can be answered with the yes or no, and the witness has not given a clear answer.
And I think she's dodging the question. I'm going to overrule the objection. Please continue.
So, Ms. Williams, just to clarify, scientists were coming and going.
At the time you're referring to, yes.
Okay, and you said that the chaos of this turnover began to prevent tests from being completed on time?
Objection, argumentative.
Response.
I'm not arguing anything. I'm just, it's a very factual question.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yeah.
The witness never said anything about chaos during this time period, so mentioning that in the question would be making it an argument.
I'm going to allow this. I'll overrule.
Ms. Williams, this turnover within Lush prevented tests from being completed on time. Is that correct?
Well, the original turnover you're referring to a few years ago definitely did, but as Lush has settled down, we've been able to really dig in and understand every aspect of Drufo.
Okay, so once testing timeliness was beginning to be impacted, that's when you were hired, correct?
Yes.
And you were also hired to keep Lush's Drufo products cost effective, correct?
Well, that was something that Doncourt had told me, but my primary focus as the toxicologist was making sure that it was safe for consumers.
But you were hired also to keep these products cost effective.
It was a minimal thing that Doncourt had asked me to do, yes.
So being cost effective was important to Lush, is that right?
Well,
Objection outside the scope of this witness.
Help me understand the objection. What do you mean by outside the scope?
Well, the witness doesn't know the intent of the entire company of Lush Fertilizer as a whole, so they are not able to answer that question.
Well, I'm not sure the testimony has been questioned enough to make that determination. I'm going to overrule as of right now, but feel free to renew your objection if it does develop in your direction. Please proceed.
Ms. Williams, I'm going to move on. You were also hired to keep Lush's Drufo products environmentally aware, right?
of course, making sure those products are environmentally safe is one of the key focuses, and also making sure that it's safe for consumers.
But isn't it true that Drufo, the chemical we're talking about, was banned in the entire European Union?
Well, it was banned because of some faulty lab conditions that don't quite mirror the real life aspects of Drufo binding to real soil versus the synthetic soil they use in those laboratory experiments.
But Ms. Williams, the chemical is banned in the European Union.
Yes, due to those faulty lab conditions, they are banned.
Ms. Williams, you failed to reference anything specific about actually ensuring that Lush fertilizer is safe for human use. Is that correct?
Dr. Williams, and I also, yes, I did not bring anything, unfortunately.
And the word safe is not in your statement today.
I cannot testify as to the exact wording of my statement, but today I am saying that it is safe because there's no evidence to prove any carcinogenic link.
But Ms. Williams, you failed to reference any specific studies about the safety of Drufo conducted by your own lab, right?
I do not have the specific studies. There's just so many of them. I just wasn't able to bring all of them.
But you failed to reference any specific studies, even though you're head of Lush's research labs. Is that right?
Again, I go through so many studies, it's hard to remember specific studies that I look over and analyze. So no, I unfortunately did not bring a single specific study.
Okay, and earlier you criticized the groups that Casey Rogers' study compared, but you failed to state the groups that your own studies compared. Is that correct?
Well, we had multiple in-house studies, but I also criticized the fact that Dr. Rogers had his study was not peer-reviewed, nor was it replicated.
No.
So,
Ms. Williams, I'm just asking if you stated anything about the groups that your studies compared.
well, we have multiple studies, so it would be explaining a lot of different experimental groups.
Okay, and you also failed to mention the sample size that these alleged studies compared. Or
Well, oh, sorry, did you want to finish?
No, go ahead.
Oh, there are multiple studies that Lush did as a part of their analysis on Drufo. So going over the many sample sizes would take up way too much time for the court.
But don't you think that's important for the jury to have as they consider the validity of your studies?
I'm not quite sure on court proceedings, but I'm sure it would have been helpful.
Okay, so you also criticized the variables that Casey Rogers controlled for, but again, like you failed to state any variables that you may or may not have controlled for in these alleged studies. Is that correct?
Well, every study has different variables. So again, it would just not be in timeliness manner to go over every single control and experimental variable in all of these studies that we performed.
Ms. Williams, while you claim that Drufo is safe for human use, you said in your statement that Lush often asks you to postulate as to broader outcomes that can actually be supported by your data.
Well, yes, I feel like this is any expert in their field is asked to expand their knowledge based on what they've researched.
But you are asked to postulate.
As with any expert, yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Very well. Is there a redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please.
Okay. First, let's begin with the topic. Could you please elaborate on why you didn't bring any specific studies to court today?
Of course, as part of the product and development engineering team, we conduct a multitude of studies within Lush Fertilizer. Bringing these studies specifically today and all of the information that's involved with them would just take up an incredible amount of time.
Okay, and could you also elaborate on why the chemical Drufo is banned in the EU?
Of course. What happened was there were some faulty lab conditions in which the soil and the laboratories didn't match the conditions of the real environment. And as a result of those faulty lab conditions, there was a slightly elevated amount of nitrates in the lab conditions. And instead of doing some more research as the American systems were able to do, we were unfortunately banned in the EU.
Okay, and does your success depend on the success of the company Lush Fertilizer?
No, absolutely not. I also serve as an associate professor, and I have in the past as well as presently, which I have income from. Additionally, I am a well-educated toxicologist and could receive a job anywhere that I wished.
So if you have this experience, what sort of financial bias do you hold in today's trial?
Nothing. In the long run, it just doesn't affect me at all.
And considering that you don't have this bias, what sort of information would you withhold to protect your company?
Absolutely nothing.
Objection. I think that's outside the scope of my cross.
I'm going to allow it. I think it's fair. Overrule.
As I was saying, I would not withhold anything to protect this company. My first and foremost priority is protecting consumers.
So are the studies or the information you brought to court today the comprehensive summation of the studies you've looked at?
Yes, they are.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Very well. You may step down.
Your Honor, may I recross?
On what basis?
The ban in the EU.
I think you crossed on that and he redirected to rehabilitate. So I don't think he went beyond the scope of your cross-examination. So I'm going to disallow that. So no, you may not. And call your next witness.
The defense rests, Your Honor.
Very well. And since we cannot make any post-trial, not post-trial, but close of evidence motions, I can't hear them and you can't make them. So we're going to be prepared for closing statements on behalf of the plaintiff first. Who is going to offer our first closing statement?
I will be offering the closing statement for the plaintiff, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Bennett Spurlock. All right, and you may proceed.
Thank you. Lush Fertilizer put profits over people, and this decision had consequences. Lush Fertilizer had a duty to exercise reasonable care to protect their consumers from harm. They have failed this duty. The defendant's actions were the direct and proximate cause of my client, Dakota Weir's damages, and they are therefore liable for negligence in today's case. Members of the jury, my co-counsel and I had the burden to prove by preponderance of the evidence each element of negligence. This means that we had to prove that it is more likely than not that Lush is liable for its negligence. This is the lowest burden of proof in our judicial system, and we have met this burden. The defense has asserted an affirmative defense of contributory negligence. In order to reduce the damages awarded to the plaintiff, opposing counsel must prove each element of the affirmative defense by a preponderance of the evidence. They have failed to prove any of these elements. Dakota Weirs used to be an active member of her community. More than anything, she loved to play the piano. Just before she was set to leave for Juilliard to pursue her dream of becoming a professional musician, Dakota began to feel sick all the time. After countless hospital visits and costly medical bills, Dakota was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Opposing counsel has tried to tell you that this is all somehow Dakota's fault, saying that she did not handle the product with care. Members of the jury, do not let them misguide you into thinking that anyone but Lush Fertilizer is to blame. Dakota said herself that if she had known that Lush Fertilizer was carcinogenic, she wouldn't have gone anywhere near the product. The evidence today did in fact show that Lush Fertilizer was carcinogenic. Lush contains a chemical compound called Drufo, which is known to be a carcinogen. Dakota was exposed to this compound through her work as a landscaping technician, and little did she know at the time, but this would come to ruin her life. My co-counsel and I called expert witness Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand. She testified that her study found that those exposed to Drufo were 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer. Lush ignored these claims because they needed to profit, even if that meant putting profits over people. Carson Durst, a former employee of Lush, testified that Lush hid data that identified Drufo as a carcinogen and proceeded to put their products on the market, jeopardizing the lives of each one of their customers. Members of the jury, not only did Lush know that Drufo was carcinogenic, Lush knew exactly how to make Drufo safe. Baking the fertilizer would have removed any carcinogens from the product. Lush's CEO, Blake Doncourt, admitted that Lush does not bake any of its products, saying that it was just too expensive for the small risk it would eliminate. Members of the jury, is cancer a small risk? So, why did Lush need to cut costs? Blake Doncourt testified about the pressure she faced to pay back Lush's investors. She also spoke about her recent divorce and how she's now required to pay her ex-spouse a significant sum of money each month. Removing carcinogens from its products just wasn't in the budget for Lush or Ms. Doncourt. Once again, Lush Fertilizer chose profits over people. My co-counsel and I have met our burden of proof in today's case by proving all of the elements of negligence. We ask you to return a verdict in favor of Ms. Dakota Weirs and to award damages in the maximum amount allowed by law. Thank you.
You? And for our timers, how much more time is left in closing argument for the plaintiff in case she wishes to have rebuttal? Yes.
I leave 1 minute and 19 seconds.
A minute and 19, it's forever. There is so much time left. All right, so a minute 19. All right, and closing for the defense.
May it please the court. Good evening, members of the jury. Now, before we begin, I would like you to picture a box. It is made out of cardboard, about 1 foot tall and 2 feet wide. When you look closer, you see a black and white sticker, and on the sticker is a picture of a wine glass with a crack around the rim and big bolded words that say fragile, handle with care. Now, would you gently move this box or just toss it to the side? Today, you have witnessed a case of a flawed plaintiff that did not handle their case with care. More than a case, you've heard the tragic story of Dakota Weirs, who unfortunately suffers from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. On behalf of the defense, we greatly sympathize and wish her for a speedy recovery. Ms. Weirs unfortunately attempts to lay blame for this disease on my client, Lush Fertilizer. She falsely accuses my client of cutting corners and distributing unsafe chemicals among its many consumers. That is the same product. This is the same client or same person who cuts corners herself. Any chemical can be dangerous if used improperly. This is why students wear goggles in their chemistry class, or why a 14-year-old should not be handling chemicals unprotected, and Ms. Weirs handled several. As people, we have a responsibility to handle our safety with care. Dakota Weirs chose not to wear the proper protective gear in accordance with Lush's advisory label, and the result of this decision, Dakota Weirs tossed her future aside, and it shattered like glass. You heard another testimony from Carson Durst, a close family friend of the Doncourts. Ms. Durst felt betrayed by her best friend's mother and CEO of Lush Fertilizer. And for this, she tossed aside both her career and her relationship with the Doncourt family. Carson Durst was fired just 3 years after the beginning of their employment for cutting corners and not handling their job with care. Then Ms. Durst begins working for the rival company of Lush Fertilizer, breaching a contract that was signed just 3 years prior. For their blatant disregard for the rules and their emotional involvement in this case, members of the jury, you must dismiss her biased testimony immediately. Dr. Casey Rogers, a big name for a big case. Dr. Rogers is a professor at University of California, Berkeley, and did in fact perform a case study on Drufo, but it was not handled carefully. This study was misleading and failed to address any other sort of linkages to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma besides Drufo. Now, I understand that the credentials of Dr. Rogers are impressive. So if they lead you to question the safety of the chemical Drufo, remember Dakota's misuse of the protective gear and Lush Fertilizer, and through their lack of protective equipment in all scenarios, by failing to meet a preponderance of the evidence, the negligence falls on the plaintiff. Ladies and gentlemen, the plaintiff holds the burden of proof today, and this burden was not met. In attempting to accuse the CEO, Blake Doncourt, of putting profits over people and allowing a carcinogenic chemical to be sold, the plaintiff has only revealed that she is a philanthropist and humanitarian who regularly and willingly donates her profits to charities. Charities that, ladies and gentlemen, are directed towards environmental protection. So allowing a harmful chemical to enter the environment is the last thing on Ms. Doncourt's mind. Now, I'll turn your attention towards Dr. Devin Williams and her experience with Drufo. Dr. Devin Williams completely unraveled the claims made by Dr. Rogers at the beginning of this case. She showed you how Drufo was the next generation of environmentally friendly fertilizer, carefully created with no such carcinogen that it was accused of containing by the plaintiff. She also showed you how, simply put, there's no causational relationship between Drufo and cancer. Our witnesses have shown this to you. Skylar Weirs, a loving twin sister to Dakota who simply knows how to separate emotion from fact. Her extensive knowledge and research has led her to the conclusion that Drufo is a safe product to use, and that is all she stands for here tonight. She saw the misguided linkage between Drufo and non-Hodgkin lymphoma, which is why she's testifying on behalf of the defense. Now, returning to this box. The plaintiff has essentially tried to place the blame on my company, Lush Fertilizer, for tossing the fragile contents of their own case all over the courtroom today. My client, Lush Fertilizer, put the warning label on the box, and it was left to the plaintiff to handle it with care. By a failure to meet the preponderance of evidence, members of the jury, I implore you to return a verdict in favor of the defense. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we have 1 minute and 19 seconds, a virtual eternity, for you to finish your rebuttal argument.
Thank you. Permission to proceed?
Yes, whenever you're ready, Ms. Bennett-Spurlock.
Members of the jury, we are not here today because Dakota Weirs failed to handle a product with care, but rather because Lush Fertilizer Incorporated created a product that causes cancer and failed to warn users of that risk. Lush's so-called warning labels only included the risk of eye irritation. If Dakota did not handle the product with care, it is solely because Lush neglected to inform her of the product's real risk, cancer. My co-counsel and I urge you to find Lush negligent and to award damages to Ms. Dakota Weirs in the maximum amount allowed by law. Thank you.
Thank you. I will remind the scoring panelists to please, at the end of their entries of their numbers, to please hit the submit button so that we can all be notified that that has occurred. And while that's happening, and to let them finish their work, I want to say a few things to our team members. First of all, I want you to realize that it's very clear to me why you're at this level. You are each excellent, amazing, amazing. You are so much further ahead than even where I was at your age. You are phenomenal. Please consider, if you are so inclined, pursuing a career in law. You will all be very good at it. Another thing, are any of you actresses or actors? Because some of you have amazing skills. If you're an actress or an actor, please let me know, because I'd like to see, because whoever Guys, I see somebody raise a hand. Amazing. Be in theater as well, by the way. On your openings and on your closings, let me give you one more little fine-tuning hint. Slow down just a little bit. I know you have a lot to say and there's a short time. I get that. But oddly enough, the speed at which you deliver will lend credibility to what you say. It's just a way people think and the way they listen. So consider that. Mr. Adams opening, the defendant's argument in the case is, may I suggest you could have said, you're going to conclude from the evidence that you don't have an argument. You have a certainty, right? Okay, just something, just tiny little, and how picky I am shows you how good you were. The cross on Weir's, Mr. Bauer. When she said, there's abundant evidence, I think I'd have gone, oh, really? I'm looking forward to seeing all that abundant evidence because so far we've got nothing. Anyway, just something about 50 years in the courtroom gives you these kind of things. Oh, by the way, guys, and you don't need to finish your questions with correct or right. Just finish it. Say, you were told to wear a mask, but you didn't, did you? You were told to wear long sleeves, but you didn't. And just leave it at that. Let them go. When Weirs was saying, well, not everybody did what we were told to do. Oh my gosh, what an opportunity. So please help me understand, ma'am. You didn't follow instructions because other people didn't follow instructions as well. And if people who don't follow instructions get sick, that's also the fault of Lush as well. You see how help me understand this. Anyway, a couple, three more. Oh my gosh. Ms. Bresky, Dr. Casey Rogers, your witness saved your question. You were sort of stuck and the witness saved you. It was really nice. But you did the most amazing pivot after the objection. You got a really good objection and you had to go, wait, I can do this. And you did it. I was so proud of you. You did excellent work. The Ms. Bennett Spurlock, the cross on Doncourt. Boy, did you rein in that witness. I'm so proud of you. You chose not to bake. Oh, you made a choice, didn't you? You chose financial security over safety. I think, thank you. I think we now see that. So what you did was build in some risk, and you knew that. There were going to be some casualties, and you knew that. How many casualties, ma'am, is enough? How many people have to catch this disease for it to be enough that you would finally do the right thing? It doesn't matter what they answer, right? It doesn't matter because the question kills them already. Correlation does not equal causation. That's an amazingly good thing. Because we know that all people who use stairways are not mass murderers. So just one of the things, you can make easier ones. I get a longer one. Wish I had hours to talk with you. By the way, be careful with objections. They call attention to testimony. Unless you're going to win it, unless you're going to really slam the other side down with an objection, generally don't do it because the jury's half asleep. And all you're going to do is wake them up and you're going to get them really paying attention to that testimony. Any rate, those are some very quick things. By the way, quit worrying, and I know you're already worried about winning or losing. Trust me, right now, you're all winners. I know everybody says that, but it's true. In 20 years, it won't make a bit of difference who won this thing. But in 20 years, you will be so far ahead in your chosen field because you have done this. Because you simply did this, you will be way ahead. So please understand that. I take that down the road for about 50 years from where you are. Okay, let's see if we can get the people who are scoring you to weigh in, and let's see what they have to say. Now, I think they've by now hopefully had a chance to put their push that little button that says submit. So if one of you, and I don't have you on my screen, if I could get one of you to go ahead and just begin. Somebody step up and begin.
I mean, we can go with the non-litigator transactional attorney first if you want. So I was a theater major, so here we are. Guys, you were all so freaking amazing. This is just like, you were all so incredible. And I like screamed internally a couple times because I was like, nailed them. It was just fantastic. Witnesses, prosecution, defense, like everybody was just phenomenal. I wrote like 5 pages of notes, and I don't even know where to start. And I wrote down a bunch of first names. I'm really sorry, everyone. I'm a little less formal, apparently. Matthias, just like there was like one time where it was just like rapid fire for you, and I was just like, go get them, like no hesitation. It was just hammer. And I wrote like some exclamation points on that one. I did get thrown a little bit when they kept saying Mrs. Durst, because that's my last name, my maiden last name. But I really loved, let's see, the opening and closing arguments. I really thought that attorneys on both sides did a great job of keeping that through line. There's that whole theory of the case and telling the story. And I think you all did a fantastic job of keeping that very coherent. Profits over people, handle with care. It was really easy. And of course, juries aren't necessarily as well acquainted with the law as they are with, metaphors and, these sayings. So it was really excellent. And when you started describing the box bag, I was like, where's she going with this? Oh my God, I know where she's going. And it was phenomenal. So the opening and closing really helped tie everything together. Just phenomenal. If somebody else wants to go for a while, I might go through some notes and come back. I could stay here all night. So
yeah, me too.
I'll jump in. You guys are all a sharp bunch. For being high schoolers, I'm floored. I'm so impressed. Everyone was very sharp and fine-tuned. There were definitely places where we could see that you stumbled a little bit or were taken aback, but I think generally everyone recovered really well, and had good logical arguments. And I think that sometimes is missed in the regular practice of law. So it was really great to see you guys at such a young age, putting those connections together and trying to put a picture together for a jury that made sense. I took so many notes because there were so many positive things that happened for each of you as you were performing or trying this case rather. I was really impressed that all of both sides seemed to have a theme and a theory of their case and really kind of hammered it throughout. I wouldn't say hammered it throughout. It was sprinkled throughout. Sometimes I think I'd like to see a little bit more of the theory or the theme added in, just because I think that can be more persuasive and more effective when you're dealing with a jury. But it was great. The illustrations were awesome. I believe it was Mr. Adams was using a trilogy frequently when he was describing things. And a trilogy is like when you name 3 separate things. It was unsafe, untested, and not effective. That's a trilogy. And so I think the way he illustrated that was really helpful during his part in this. And I was just really impressed that you guys were citing the rules of evidence as well. I mean, you all knew it cold. I was just so impressed. I was like, wow, there are attorneys that I don't think know them that well. So
you guys were better than my evidence teacher in law school. I'm just saying. So
Yeah, and you guys all laid proper foundations for qualifying experts. There was a time, I believe, I can't remember with which expert, it was one of the first ones, trying to get a whole lot of things qualified as an expert in that area of her practice. And that was a little off, but generally speaking, I think everyone did a really great job with qualifying their experts. So, and that's, a thing that can be mastered. And I think you all did very well with that. So, and I thought everyone was really professional, super, yeah, there was no issues with professionalism. I was also impressed with that as well. So overall, great job. I could go on all evening as well, but I was very impressed. Great job, guys.
Yep.
Hey, Kate, while you're on, were you able to hit submit in your scores?
I am trying to, yeah, I had a little hiccup on switching things, so I'm fixing it right now. So I'm gonna turn my camera off, turn my volume off, and not listen for a minute, but let me get it done.
Thank you.
All right, I'm the final scorer here. I'd like to say, I'll just keep my comments relatively brief because I know we all need to move on to dinner and thinking about things all night. I'm sure your minds are going to be spinning on how to come back tomorrow. But overall, I would say very entertaining. I'm actually on the committee that wrote the case problem, and it is really interesting to see how the participants bring life to the witness statements that we draft and pull out all the inconsistencies in the exhibits and the way they use the expert CVs. And in particular on the experts, I thought there was a great tension that was maintained between the sides with regard to qualifying the witnesses. I thought the voir dires were all very effective. And I thought, you went as far as you could. You even won in the sense of showing the likelihood of bias or the lack of expertise, even if the judge allowed a witness in as an expert. By questioning on voir dire, you actually tainted how the jury would weigh the testimony from that expert. So in many ways, just by going through that exercise, you actually had a win, even though the other side may have still gotten that witness in as an expert. Overall, though, I think there were a lot of objections. I think that the Judge Ledbetter's comments with regard to strategically using objections, should be taken to heart, because you don't necessarily want to make every objection that comes to mind. I think overall there was a pretty good balance, though, and I would say that there were healthy, creative responses, both for the defense of the testimony and for the challenge of the testimony. And the attorneys didn't get flustered, right? You didn't take the judge's rulings personally, and I think that really helped you because it didn't throw you off your game. You understood you're not going to win them all, but you needed to get back to getting the testimony and the evidence presented, right? You didn't take it personally. I thought that was handled very professionally. Not all practicing attorneys handle it the same way. I would say that the witnesses were very effective, not only in personifying the characters, but we saw some great exhibitions of witnesses knowing what their statements said, and knowing what the statements of the other witnesses said, and knowing how they played together, and knowing how the weaknesses in the other could be exploited when you were offering your own direct testimony. So that was handled very well too. The cross-examinations, I tell you, there was I'm not sure if it was the judge's comments or Miss McGregor's comments, but I thought every time there was an examination, well, this was the best one. And then there would come the direct examination, right? And then there would come the next witness. And you just kind of kept building on it. But the cross-examinations, I think every one of them was so effective at deflating the zingers, right, that came out on direct. I mean, they were thoughtfully crafted, the cross-examination questions. So very, very effective. So there was one examination that I found to be particularly entertaining in terms of the back and forth. And it was the examination of the first defense witness. This was Blake Duncourt. And I think that stood out because there was a lot of back and forth. I think the witness might have started off a little stiff, but through the direct examination, we brought out a lot of really good testimony. We also brought out some really good examples of why there was another theory to how all of this happened. It wasn't just the defendant's company doing this. Then again, we had another one of these great cross-examinations where you were bringing up the financial issues. And I mean, you didn't have to really hit the jury on the head with this, but clearly, I think Judge Ledbetter also pointed this out. Surely you put the idea in the head, in the minds of the jurors that there's no way you can completely dismiss the financial issues here. And then on recross, we had such an amazing rehabilitation of that witness, just looking at all these potential holes that the plaintiffs poked in that witness's testimony on cross. You just kind of said, well, hey, let's look at it this way. Why? Come on. Very nicely done, very entertaining. And yeah, we had a couple examples of really good rehabilitation of witnesses. And I think that really shows, really highlighted the professionalism of all the attorneys in particular, because you didn't get crestfallen if on cross-examination the other attorney was able to get your witness on a roll. You came back with some great opportunities to rehabilitate your witness and to lay your story again in front of the jury. So I said I would be short, but actually I went quite long there. But nevertheless, very impressed, and good luck tomorrow.
And by the way, to the students, I want you guys to understand that when I thought things were going a little too well, I threw you a curveball to see how you would deal with it. So if you felt like maybe I made some really bad rulings or kind of got on your case a little bit, yeah, I did. So there was a madness there, maybe even a method. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We want to thank Judge Ledbetter and all of our scoring panelists, and good luck to you all. You all did amazing, and we can't wait for tomorrow's rounds. So have a good night, get some rest, eat well, and thank you all. Courtroom 7 can be dismissed.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good job to the other team. You guys were incredible.
Well, it was our high honor to be with you today. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.